I got all my criterions in the back here, all 200 something of them. I actually spent a lot of time coming up with this top 15 list. I was telling Riley that it's difficult for me to do top 10. I had to expand it, and even at 15, I was like, oh, I could easily do 20.
I was really hard on myself and still ended up with 20 nominees that I had to cut down to 15. So
I actually have the opposite problem. I consume so little media that mine are just kind of scattershotted. Some are TV shows, some are movies, one's a video game.
And I thought I'd be a nice contrarian boy and just pick a 15-part serial by my great-great-great-great-great-uncle Tom Mix.
Boyd.
Trixie and Lain, a.k.a. Vizzy and the Golden Wind, the VOIDGAZERS. Follow me into the void, cause it's typically avoid feelings that you're paranoid of making you into a joint to bury. We carry all your memories and remix your ancestors. Past the future, have the melt in your mouth texture.
Cheese grabs in your head. Just runs the bed, dodge the fence. A virus spreads. You're not safe, so take the pill. Everyone can see you on the hill, so come into the void.
Well, that's a good way to introduce what each of us is doing here. But yeah, we're going to be reading off lists of what we consider to be the top 15 most necessary either films in the case of the Kino Corner. In my case, it's going to be anime. And
Bird
you guys,
case, miscellaneous
Bird's
media.
got miscellaneous media.
And I'll be talking about the 15 westerns you have to watch, which are all the same thing.
So Kino, before we get started, would you like to give us a little introduction to yourself and your channel?
Yeah, so I'm the only Kino YouTuber, which is different than film YouTube, because film YouTube is occupied by soy boys and degenerates who,
movie reviewers.
They just see what Letterboxd likes or like what's popular on film Twitter, and then they just soy jack all over it. Or they just like watch these like bad movies, and it's just going bit by bit, going like, look how bad this movie is. And I'm just like, that's so boring. I mean, some of them are my friends, so I don't dislike people.
No, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I'm friends with the complete cinematic failure guy.
And talking about tapes guy.
Famous YouTuber Tony from Hack the Movies.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm also friends with Vito.
He's such an unfortunate friend.
No, I mean, my channel is more about, I like to think of it more as like art appreciation or like film appreciation, where in my videos, I kind of go through how movies are made or like the philosophies behind movies and stuff like that. So my Truman Show video, which I just won a like 3 or 4 week long copyright battle with Paramount over.
Oh God.
So I just basically got all the money back for the last month on it. But in the Truman Show video, like I talk about, I live right next to the town where the Truman Show is shot. So I shot the video there, like in the actual like movie location. And I also talk about how it relates to Plato's allegory of the cave, Baudrillard's simulation and simulacra, and how the town itself is was actually the first town to be built in the movement of new urbanism, and how that actually fits into the movie as a whole, and also the background behind the writing of the script of the Truman Show. So I do like a lot of research into sort of the history behind the films, the biographies of the directors. The next video that I'm making, the next big video I'm making, I don't know if it's going to come out before or after April 1st, because I have an April Fool's video that I'm releasing. But the next big video that I'm making is going to be covering one of my favorite movies, which is Sallow, or 120 Days of Sodom.
Should we start getting into our recommendations?
Let's hop into recommendation.
Fortunately, you've mentioned one of mine already, which is The Thing, because it's the first it's the first good horror movie I ever saw, and pretty much the only good horror movie I've seen till now.
Right, you're just not really into horror movies.
Yeah, I really like the practical effects. They're from the 80s, but they're so cool. They're so neat. And then the final one, where he finds out he's the alien because he drinks gasoline. Just as a whole thing. So, The Thing. The Thing is a genuinely scary monster that they explain it well. If this thing got into humanity, we'd be screwed.
I tried to really limit my list to what I consider to be Kino anime. So, it had to be shows that look amazing, that are paced well, that I consider to be of cinematic quality, whether they're a TV show or an actual film. and also are favorites of mine. So I'm not recommending just like the most artsy movies or whatever. It's like these are shows I personally think are great. I think that everybody should give a shot to, not necessarily that everyone will love, but so my number 15, I wanted to start with, because I think the most popular type of anime is shonen action series, stuff that's based on manga made for young boys, that is full of action and, you know, big cast of characters, huge episode counts. Most of them are kind of known for not being Kino. You know, usually seen as like very entry level, very surface level. But the one I'm recommending is Yu Yu Hakusho, which I consider to be the best anime adaptation of a shonen manga. It was made from 1992 to 1995, 112 episodes long. Just absolutely full of gorgeous hand-drawn animation, lots of really experimental episodes. Director Akiyuki Shinbo, who is known for being like one of the more experimental directors of the 2000s and 2010s, got his start doing episode direction on that show. It has a very fulfilling character arc, because as a shonen protagonist, Yusuke Urameshi, the main character, he's a punk kid whose mom's an alcoholic, his dad's a dead, like, former gangster, teachers all treat him like shit, he's always getting into fights, and, like, you get this sense that he just cannot catch a break, and he doesn't see why he should be a decent person at all. But he gets killed in an auto accident saving a kid, and becomes an assistant to a god of death for a while, until he is able to be brought back to life and then work as a detective for the spirit world. So he has to basically fight monsters in the name of the pantheon of gods in this universe. So it's a fun and wacky kind of thing. It also takes a very massive shift, because the first like 8 or so episodes are about him like being a ghost, working with the god of death, trying to come back to life, and then it becomes like a total action show after that. And the first 26 episodes comprise like a bunch of short arcs. Some of them are not as Kino as others, but overall, still very solid show. Where it really opens up is when you get into the second section, the Dark Tournament, which is kind of like the ultimate tournament arc. And like shonen anime are known for their tournament arcs. It's a very easy way to give yourself an excuse to write a ton of different characters with crazy powers and have them all fight. But Yu Yu Hakusho has the best looking arena, the best like portrayal of this, extremely well paced, super inventive. The same manga author would later go on to make Hunter x Hunter, which is also seen as like a classic. It's these days more popular than Yu Yu Hakusho. The only reason I chose Yu Yu Hakusho over Hunter x Hunter is that in the late 90s, there was a Hunter x Hunter adaptation that is more Kino in terms of like looking better, way better shot compositions and stuff. The one that was made from 2011 to 2014, while an amazing show, and it covers the much more of the manga, it's not as Kino. It's just not as Kino. And as much as I absolutely love it, I think that Yu Yu Hakusho has more legitimate reason to be an anime. So, like, just the fact that it has so many fight scenes that are brought to life so incredibly. Lots of background animation, which is super rare these days. But it's actually pretty tight for a shonen action series. So, I never got bored watching it, and that is not something I could say for any other show of that length. So, that's my first recommendation. Yu Yu Hakusho. If you want to watch an action show, that's the best one I can recommend.
Well, at 112 episodes, it pales in comparison to One Piece. Right?
Yeah, One Piece is like close to 1,000, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, One Piece, that's a case of something that you should never watch that anime. You should only read the manga, because the anime looks like shit. Like, it's just not Kino. Manga, whatever the Kino equivalent for manga, One Piece would qualify for that. But.
All right, so I'm going to start off my top 15 list with a movie that some might say is kind of basic for... like a cinephile, a kinographer like myself. But this is a film that, like, nonetheless, I just absolutely love to death, and I have seen several times. And it's a comfort film for me, and that is François Truffaut's The 400 Blows, Les quatre, coups. that he came out with in 1959, and a lot of times it's people equate it to starting the French New Wave, but I don't think that that's really true. There were other films kind of coming around at the same time, like Hiroshima, Mon Amour, Elevator to the Gallows, and then of course, François Truffaut worked on Breathless with Bout de Souffle with Jean-Luc Godard. But the 400 Blows just has this, for one, the cinematography of it is just spectacular. But it also has like this humanism to the film that I think that a lot of French New Wave films kind of lacked, especially Godard. Like, Godard just was not very humanist in how he portrayed his subjects. He was very much like about the ideas of socialism and, stuff like that. And Truffaut, and that's why I'm not particularly a huge fan of Godard, is because he cares more about his ideas than he does his characters, in my opinion.
Argument.
Yeah, but with Truffaut, he really cares about his characters, and he really and you can tell too that Antoine Doinel, who's the main character of the 400 Blows, is based on it's autobiographical, it's semi-autobiographical of François Truffaut, and you're following this kid. He's living in his life and everything like that. He's living his life with his mom and his dad, and he sees his mom is has a lover and stuff like that, and the kid falls in with loves Balzac. But he doesn't, he loves him so much, but he doesn't really understand how to show his inspiration. He ends up copying him, which, is just as an artist, it definitely hits pretty close to home because when you love a particular artist and you're an artist yourself, it's so easy, especially when you're a young artist, just copy that artist, which is what Antoine Doinel does. There's not really this set storyline, but it's such a great character. It's such a great character study of him that you just sort of, I don't know, the film just envelops you, and the whole last segment of the film is so great, and it has probably one of, if not I'm not going to say the best ending segment, but it's up there. It's him running onto the beach. And also the thing about the 400 Blows is a lot of people don't know this, surprisingly, is that it's actually the first in a series of films. So François Truffaut made a whole series about Antoine Doinel. That's the 400 Blows, and then it's Antoine et Colette, and then it's Stolen Kisses, also known as Baiser Volé, and then it's Mariage Conjugal, also known in English as Bed and Board. If you can't tell, I used to live in Paris. So. And then it's Love on the Run. So it's a whole series of films that is kind of chronicling a sort of semi-autobiographical take on the director, François Truffaut. And I think that The 400 Blows is a really good entrance into the French New Wave, especially since I think that Truffaut was one of the better directors, if not the best director of the French New Wave. Although I could argue that maybe Romer was better than Truffaut. I don't know. You could argue that. I also really liked Louis Malle. There's some really great directors at that time, but I would not put Godard up there. So if you want to get, French New Wave is one of those, you have to at least see a few movies from that sort of, from that time period. Yep. Start with the 400 Blows. If you like it, dive deeper. If you don't, then it's probably not for you. Okay.
So the Kino that I'm bringing in, that I think that everybody, my thing I'm going to recommend to you, if you ever ask me what to watch and you haven't seen this yet, is going to be The Miracle Writer by Reeves Eason and Armand Schaefer. It was it's the biggest mascot serial. So the company Mascot did King of the Congo, which was the first feature with sound. And Mascot did a bunch of silent features before moving into sound. The Miracle Writer was also produced by Nat Levine, who produced 105 westerns between 21 and 1946. He's the biggest name in western production because he worked with John Ford on a bunch of stuff. And The Miracle Writer stars my greatest ancestor, Tom Mix. It was his last major Hollywood project before he moved full-time into his own circus he made. So he could just do horse tricks and stuff. it's not quite a movie because it's like a 300-minute serial composed in 15 parts now. Like you can find it in 15 parts. And
so sort of like a television show, but
right.
Before television.
Yeah, it was before like television westerns, but it's the kind of thing you can point at and go, oh, this is why there's Bonanza. Because this was such a good idea. And his career immediately tapered off after this project. There's speculation. It's either what he said, which is that he just wanted to go do the circus that he had, his Wild West show, like Bill Hickok. But also, he sounds like me. Like, he has this nasally, like, you probably don't think he could beat you up in a fight voice. Because he, like, had a bunch of broken noses and was shot in the throat at one point. He took a bullet through the side of his throat when he was younger. Because he was, he lived in the era where he was allowed to be a real cowboy and then act like a cowboy. Okay. Because he's the king of cowboys. He's the first cowboy movie star. Because he was Wyatt Earp's pallbearer. Like, they were personal friends. Like, Wyatt Earp was his mentor.
Wow.
So at the end of the movie Tombstone, it just says Tom Mix wept as the end card. Wow. Because that's what that is. And anyway, he made $40,000 off this serial, which back then was just fucking insane amounts of money. He was the Robert Downey Jr. of his time. And in this movie, he wears the white hat, which is like now iconic. His Tom Mix Stetson is like $400 if you want to buy one, and it's conceptually where the white hat black hat thing comes from is Tom Mix movies, because you look at a bunch of cowboys in black and white and silent, and you see that he has the less black hat, and he's the good guy.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You just know right off the bat. That was a big thing John Ford pushed for symbolic reasons. The serial itself is about Tom Morgan, the character he's playing, very Charlie Sheen, to be like, oh, I just want to be Tom in my movie. I love that. So he played a Texas Ranger, which he famously was not, but for a long time people thought he was. Turns out Fox Studios had him pretend he was a Texas Ranger in real life. Amazing. To sell his movies. Came out later as a big scandal that he wasn't, and that he's an abandoner from the military. Like, he went AWOL. But by time the military was like, this guy should be in jail, he was a multimillionaire. And everyone was like, no, he's worth way too much to go to jail. Yeah. So they just kind of made him an honorary Texas Ranger.
Oh, that's great.
So anyway, this is kind of more of a Tom Mix history lesson, because people don't know, and they should. The plot is Tom Morgan joins the Texas Rangers to avenge his father's death at the hands of anti-reservation homesteaders and to follow in his path as a proponent of Indian rights. The movie starts with these really cool montage clips of Daniel Boone and Davy Crockett, and it's skipping time through 1770 to 1820 to show over time the United States spreading out over the Indian territory, and it shows all these historical figures showing reference. Daniel Boone's oh, don't go farther than this point we're at, because that's Indian territory. So then the people don't listen to him, go kill a bunch of Indians. And then Davy Crockett's we don't fish over there, it'll cause problems. And then fucking more of the white man moves out and does that anyway. So we fast forward to the 1930s, and he's raised by Indians after his dad is killed. So it starts this trope, which fucking lots of people have done since. The
raised by Indians one, sort of like Little Big Man.
Right. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
He was made an honorary tribesman, Hoten, the Miracle Rider. So that's where.
Name.
Yeah, that's where the name of the movie comes from. He's the Miracle Rider, and there's this moment when the whole tribe is watching him get crowned an honorary member, and then the chief is you're the second ranking in the village, only to myself. And that made all these Indians mad. So the Indians, Native Americans, whatever, one of them betrays the tribe, goes to this guy named Baron Zaroff, which is obviously based on Basil Zaroff, the Merchant of Death from World War II. And Zaroff starts a science fiction plot with this Indian, where he's oh, there's a science fiction element X-94 on your reservation that we have to get. So it's also one of the first big like science fiction things, because they were straight up like, no, you have to get a MacGuffin that shoots magic explosive bullets, right? And that wasn't really being done then. It was, most movies were like, look at this horse run, right? So that's what it's about, and I recommend everybody goes and watches it. It's on YouTube right now. I think 9 or 10 of his films like exist in any form at all now. But he made 300 of them.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a big Fox Studio fire.
Yeah, I actually I made a video for the Gamer from Mars. I wrote it and edited it. And it was about a film called London After Midnight. But a big part of that video is talking about just how many films from that era are lost. And it's something like 75, or it's like 90% of silent movies are lost, and 75% are thought to be lost forever. Like there's no getting them. It's an insane amount. Like almost this entire era of film is just gone.
I mean, here's the catastrophic blow that this had to my life personally. My dad's family, the Mixes, that they go all the way back to Mix Run, Pennsylvania. They are the core of the Mix family, and there's like lots of branches now. But they, like, for 2 or 3 generations, they just grew up being told, like, oh, if you smoke or drink, then you'll ruin our family legacy forever. Because people blame Tom Mix's, like, behaviors as he was not a very moral character back then. He was an alcoholic. He died drunk in a car accident in Arizona because he hit a gulch, and then a briefcase with $2 million flew out of the back seat and hit him in the neck and killed him.
Killed by millions of dollars.
He got killed by millions of dollars driving drunk in the rain in Arizona. Well, and so ultimately what this did was destroy our family's legacy completely. Fox took all of the, any money they could get from him. His estate was sold off and everything, because back then there was no royalties or anything. Like he had to keep working. He had to do 300 movies because that's the only way to make any money.
Yeah.
Like, once you've done the project and been paid for it, it's not yours anymore.
Yeah, that's how it worked. Yeah.
Yeah, we basically, like, I grew up my whole life being told that, like, oh, if you drink, or if you're reckless at all, or this and that, then you're gonna die. And it's just weird. It's weird, concern trolley shit that only comes from, like, blaming something totally random and, like, circumstantial on the downfall of your whole family. Right.
Yeah.
Which is, I don't like entitled people. I think a lot of my bitter older relatives are like, feel entitled to his legacy. Like, oh, but he was so famous. Why don't we have money? And it's like, because you didn't do anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because, like, you weren't anybody. It's just crazy. It's crazy the legacy he had, and then how little of it exists. But whenever I meet somebody who's like really into Kino or is like into old shit, like, it really just takes me being like, oh, do you remember John Ford? Like the guy who like started in all his movies. Like, but yeah, the thing that's the most to note about that is Tom Mix did most of his stunts in his 291 film career. But in this movie, Serial, he was stunt doubled by Cliff Lyons. And I refuse to think that Cliff Lyons isn't the guy that Cliff Booth is based on in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Because Cliff Lyons was like the infamous stuntman in the John Ford films.
Yeah. I don't think that's a coincidence.
For John Wayne.
Yeah, that's probably not a coincidence.
Then I have Hell on Wheels on the Western front. It's a television show. I will call it playful historical fiction. The main character definitely didn't exist, but they play around with like Thomas Durant, who ran Union Pacific, Ulysses S. Grant, Brigham Young. And it's just a really fun show. It's what the camps riding behind the railroad of the people who built the railroad were doing. It's a lot of fun.
All right, well, my number 14, I'm going to recommend the only comedy anime that I think you need, which is Gintama. Gintama is actually also astronomically long. It's got like 400 episodes or something. What makes this show great is that it is the most robust show I've ever seen. It basically becomes anything anything. It can become anything. It's primarily a parody and comedy series. So the premise is that it takes place during the Edo period in Japan, right at the beginning of the Meiji era, right after the whole Bakumatsu Revolution, and right after that happens, Japan gets invaded by aliens from all over space. So immediately the samurai people who are like running the government / living in Tokyo, or Edo rather, just have fuck tons of aliens everywhere, doing weird crazy stuff. And so at first the show is mostly like exploring that premise, like presenting these goofy situations using the aliens, and the main characters run a their shop is just called like a do, I don't remember the exact term they use. It's like do whatever. Like they're just an odd jobs shop. Like whatever people need to hire someone for, we'll go try to do it. And the main character, Gintoki, is a former samurai who no longer kills people, similar to Rurouni Kenshin, except that he is a lazy asshole who doesn't care about anything and just wants to sleep and read Shonen Jump and drink strawberry milk, and that's all he wants to do. So as it goes along, after the first like 15, 20 episodes or so, it becomes more focused on parodying various genres, types of films, various anime shows, and just does such an incredible job of it. But where it really starts to shine is it'll have these arcs where it gets really serious and will do like a real plot line, and just executed so brilliantly, like with all the twists and turns of any amazing action show or drama that you could, any other show you would watch, but it can turn on a dime back into comedy. So you'll be watching scenes where like some really crazy shit happens and some characters like die and like, oh my god, all these revelations are happening, and then like goes straight into one of the funniest jokes you've heard all day. So the ability for the show to just fully embody other genres and then subvert them at every turn never ceases to surprise me. And I'm not going to pretend I've seen all of Gintama. I've seen like 160 episodes, which is more than I've seen of probably anything else, but I don't feel like this incredible urge to go finish it, because like I said, it's pretty much the only comedy show you really need, because it's just got so many characters, so many different types of comedy. And even when it's like deciding to be serious for a little while, it does that so well that it makes it even funnier. Like it's just that much funnier to see that it can be serious and do it right, and then dive right back to what it's doing. And then sometimes it also goes like super postmodern and just has episodes that are like trolling the audience or doing really weird stuff. Some of it's so esoteric as to be very difficult to describe. So it's the kind of thing where it's hard for me to recommend to people, both because of the length and because the early part of the show isn't as variety driven. Like it feels like it's gonna just be kind of a slapstick comedy. Not that it's bad. I love the early episodes. One of the early ones has the main character gets into a fight with the leader of the police force, and he gives the guy a sword at the start of the fight, a wooden sword that they both have. And then when they go to fight, he breaks right through the wooden sword and hits the guy in the head, because he had before the fight whittled through it, like made a deep cut in it with a nail file, so that this guy would lose. And everybody's just like stunned that the main character has done something so bastardly, and he's just laughing about it. And I was like, I love this show. That was the moment I really got into it. But it just goes so far into the direction of like crazy wild parody. I often recommend people start with episode 20, I think, because that is a Death Note parody. So anyone who's seen Death Note,
nice. Yeah, I like Death Note.
It's a really fun Death Note parody. But so that's my number 14.
Okay, cool. So I'm gonna take us because I was trying to like cover a lot of the globe with this list. I'm gonna take us to Australia for my number 14. And one of my favorite Australian movies. In an Australian movie I don't see talked about that much, but it's directed by Peter Weir, who directed The Truman Show and Dead Poet Society and Master and Commander, and he's an Australian director. And it's a film called Picnic at Hanging Rock. It's a film that I love very much, and it's about a girls' school in the turn of the century, so around the 1900 or like the very early 20th century, Australia. And they go on to a picnic at Hanging Rock, in which 4 of the girls and one of the teachers are essentially hypnotized by this like geological presence by the Hanging Rock, and they're brought up there and they completely disappear. And then it becomes this sort of mystery, but it's a very esoteric movie. It's a very spiritual movie. It there's a lot of it's super spiritual. But one of the funny stories about it is that it's based on a novel, and I know that Riley was talking about how the studio was saying how like Tom Mix was actually a ranger, but in a similar sense, this novel, part of their marketing campaign was saying that this was based on a true story, but it's not. It's not based on a true story, but still people
they rarely are.
Yeah, but still some people to this day think that, this is something that actually happened. No, it didn't actually happen. But
I wonder how many people think that of like the Amityville Horror.
Yeah, exactly. Or Fargo.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, like, this movie is just has to be one of the most beautiful movies I've ever seen. From the sets to the costume design. And one of the things that they did in this movie was to give it this ethereal feel to it. They put a bridal veil over the camera lens to sort of give it this like little blurriness to it that
that's really interesting.
Yeah, makes it feel like like you're looking into some sort of like heavenly sort of photo, or a heavenly world or something like that. And it's a movie that it's really hard to describe with words. I would say that you just have to go and watch it.
Next, I have Narcos, the Pablo Escobar one. The Mexico one's good, but it's not on my list. Narcos is really fun, and it's, again, I will call it playful historical fiction, because how are we supposed to know what happened? There weren't really reporters or anything around there, except for the one that was fucking Pablo Escobar, of course. And it's a really fun show. I learned a lot through hearing it on the show and then double-checking that it was real. And there was a lot. It's cool. You get to see a lot of cocaine. You get to see a lot of weed.
You get to see a lot of cocaine.
The guy who plays Escobar is an incredible actor. And yeah.
All right. Yeah. My number 13. So one of the things that anime is best at, and that people in the West tend to love it the most for, is creating epic adventure stories. And all of the best ones are anime original shows that aren't based on anything, where just creators got together, came up with a cool world, cool characters to explore that world, and an overarching narrative about, saving the world or whatever to play within it. There's lots of good shows in this nature, but I think the best one is Eureka 7, which is a show that has surfing mechs that it takes place on I think it's like a far future version of Earth, but there's this like sort of energy in the atmosphere called trapars, and you surf on the trapars. And so the main character is a like 12-year-old kid who hates his hometown. His dad was like a big hero, but he doesn't want to have to try to live up to him or anything. He lives with his granddad in like a mechanic's shop. And then one day, his idol, this famous surfer named Holland Novak, who's travels around the world in a ship called the Gecko State that has his whole crew on it, and they publish a surfing magazine about their cool robot surfing, and he wants to be one of them. And one day they happen to stop into his town for repairs, and he meets this incredibly beautiful girl named Eureka, who is part of the crew, and he's like in love with her. He wants to follow them. He wants to go off with her and all that. So he manages to stumble his way into joining the crew, only to be hit with the harsh reality of the fact that they are all complete assholes who want nothing to do with him. And not even so much that they're assholes as that he's like an entitled brat, and they all just like ruthlessly dig into him constantly. There's a lot of people who don't like this show in the early episodes because they're like, oh, the main character's like kind of a bratty kid. That's the point. You're not supposed to necessarily, I mean, if you're not him, you shouldn't relate to him. You should relate to all of the adults and how hilarious it is the way they just like rib on him constantly. But he eventually, it's a coming-of-age story. I have 2 coming-of-age anime on this list, but this is the one that, like, is the big epic one. If you want to watch a, boy becomes a man, and a lot of it is through the way that he's trying to protect this girl who is both way more powerful than him, way more experienced, and dealing with way more. And he is totally out of his depth in, like, trying to deal with any of this at all. So the whole show is about, like, just the constant, like, beating into this kid's head that he needs to grow up if he wants to do the things he wants to do. And, all while this is all happening on this airship that's traveling around this really cool... what would I call it? It's almost like steampunk, except that it's surfing themed. So it's like surf punk, I guess. A surf punk world that has like lots of spiritual underpinnings to it. There's a character named Stoner who's like the guru of the ship who kind of spells out some of the themes in the background and stuff like that. But it's a show that combines lots of different worldly ideas to create like a very fleshed out setting and characters. It's also great because even though it is obviously made for younger audiences like the main character Renton, the older characters are so well fleshed out that if you decided that they are the main characters to you, it works even better that way. So it's gorgeous to look at for 50 straight episodes, which is more than I can say of most shows. And just like if I had to recommend one big adventure anime, that is the one.
Well, I'll do my number 13 here, and I gotta say that my number 13 was probably my hardest. Now, I'm saying that none of this is in any particular order, but it's sort of like with a lot of different, I was like, I have to like cover all these bases, right? So my number 13, I've been switching it up like every couple hours, and it's been Orson Welles movies. Because as I was saying earlier, I'm just like the biggest Orson Welles stan on the planet. So I have written here Chimes at Midnight, which I do think everyone should watch, but I think that might not be the best introduction to Orson Welles. So I'm going to change that right now to Touch of Evil. I think Touch of Evil is the best introduction into Orson Welles. It's a noir crime thriller with one of the best opening shots, like, of all time. I mean, you can look up the opening shot on YouTube, and it's an unbroken shot that is just absolutely outstanding. And it stars Charlton Heston as a Mexican lawyer who gets, and there's an explosion at the beginning, and it brings in Orson Welles, who is this dirty cop. He's a detective, but he's dirty. He's a bad guy, and and so you have this sort of like corrupted police agency. You have this sort of like Mexican gangs, and you have Charlton Heston in the middle. And Charlton Heston is like this guy who, he always wants to do the right thing all the time. And Orson Welles, his character is villainous. He's even more villainous than the actual villains. But he's a very complex character. He's not played out like, just that dirty cop kind of guy. And his sort of confidant is actually played by Marlene Dietrich. If anyone who is into like the old Joseph von Sternberg movies knows that she starred in like The Blue Angel and Shanghai Express and a whole bunch of old von Sternberg films. And she's obviously great, and I love Marlene Dietrich. But yeah, Orson Welles is like, he had an eye for camera composition, and it's in this stark black and white photography, and playing as the bad guy, and and he plays such a good bad guy in that. But I don't want to. I'm not going to spoil it. He's a sort of bad guy, I would say. But Charlton Heston also is just a great actor, it was such a good combination of a lot of really great actors, an amazing script, and even better direction cinematography. And if you want to get into Orson Welles, I don't think Orson Welles has made a single bad film, but I know that some people, they'll watch Citizen Kane and they'll think it's boring because they're not really able to watch it with the appreciation, because they don't know, like they haven't seen a lot of films from around that era to really understand how actually transformative and how just boundary pushing Citizen Kane was, like how amazing it actually was. It's hard to understand from a 2021
I know it's
perspective.
credited with like inventing a lot of like modern lighting techniques and stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, I actually maybe tell Riley to put my Citizen Kane video in the thing, because
I will do that.
Yeah, because I go through, like, in that video, I kind of go point by point, like all the different things. Like one big revolution of Citizen Kane, and this is something no one ever thinks about, is it introduced showing roofs in studio films. Because how a lot of studio films were shot, or how almost all the studio films were shot, Now, silent movies were a little bit different because they could go onto, into different places and go into real locations because they weren't shooting sound and stuff like that. But with the advent of sound, if they were shooting in a studio, they would have the lights above the set, so it would just be walls. But Orson Welles wanted to do all these really low-angle shots, so you're going to see the ceiling.
Right.
So that was like a big thing. That was like a big deal back then. The fact that his sets had ceilings. It's like this tiny thing that you wouldn't even think about, but it was a big deal back then. And it was a lot of little stuff like that. But, I mean, there was much bigger stuff, but, I'll let people watch the video. But yeah, no, if you want to get into Orson Welles, Touch of Evil is probably the best entry point. After that, watch Citizen Kane, Magnificent Ambersons, Lady from Shanghai, and then if you really like those, get into his Shakespearean stuff like Chimes at Midnight, Othello, Macbeth.
While you've been talking, I was just watching the whole opening scene of Touch of Evil, and I was just like, how?
Yeah, exactly. It's amazing. Like, it goes from, like, you're seeing the shadows, and then it's like it gets put on a crane, then it's going up, and then it's following the car. And think, this is in the 50s. Like, this is before a lot of, like, modern technology and everything like that. He couldn't look through the viewfinder. Like, he couldn't look through a monitor or anything like that while shooting that.
I'm watching it, like, I would have thought that you would need, like, a robot arm programmed on a path to get it this smooth. Like,
yeah, it's an amazing opening shot, and the whole movie is just super entertaining, and that's why I say it's a really good intro, because it's not like, as a movie, it's got like a lot of these artistic flourishes, but it's got more than enough for just like your normal viewer to watch it and be entertained throughout and not be bored at all.
And then next I have Daredevil, the Netflix series. Just because it's a fun lawyer show, it's a fun crime-fighting show. I really got a kick out of it.
So my number 12 is going to be a show I'm very known for being a proponent of, and I just did a video about it, K-On! It is the ultimate cute girl anime. And to clarify, because like the reputation of when I say cute girl anime is like shows about like leering at cute girls or like, perverted harem shows. K-On's not like that. It's really for all audiences. It's just as popular with girls as with boys, but it's just about 5 high school girls who are part of a light music club, and it doesn't focus so much on them forming a band and creating music, though that is happening in the background. It's mostly focused on the friendship that develops between them and what that changes about their lives. And really the magic of the show is just in how well made it is, because like it's all based on real locations but with like tons of flourish added to it, and like the mannerisms of the characters and everything are super detailed. The animation's just really incredible all the way through. Kyoto Animation is a studio that challenges themselves to like animate things at camera angles that are really hard to do, where like characters are moving from foreground to background a lot, and like all these things that be really hard to manage proportions, and most studios will never even try. They'll do it constantly. So, it is Kino just to look at and listen to. The music's also really great, and the voice performances are really good. It was like all newcomer actresses who have become like legends because of how well they did in this show. But like I think it was important for them to be that way because the show basically starts off with these 4 girls meeting, and they're all really awkward towards each other. They don't really gel. They're trying to, like, they want to make, well, one of them really wants to make a band. One is just looking for a club to join. One is looking for some kind of sense of purpose in life, and the other one's just been dragged in. So, like, none of them are really on the same page. And then as you go through the first season, they, just through being around each other, start to pick up on each other's, habits and good and bad traits, where, like, on the one hand they all have the problem of feeding into each other's laziness, but on the other hand they help each other to become, like, less socially awkward or more less lazy in one character's case, less pretentious in another character's case. So, like, and none of this is ever, like, spelled out. There's never, like, a character going, oh, you've changed so much. It's something that you as the audience observe. And really, for me, it only came full circle when I rewatched the show and was like, oh, wow, these characters were totally different people at the start. And it happened so gradually that I just wouldn't have ever thought that it would, like, feel so different to go back to the start. So
yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and that's always what I found the most fascinating about it. It's got 39 episodes in a movie, and you get to spend as much time with these characters as you could possibly want. It has some incredible dramatic moments towards the end of the second season of, like, these characters are all going to graduate, so, like, this is their last chance to, like, be in the band. They have, like, their youngest member is going to still be in high school when they all graduate, so there's a lot to do with, like, shit, we've learned so much from being around one another. How could we possibly, like, live without each other? But then their teacher, who's, like, she had also been in the music club when she was in school. Granted, it was a metal band at the time. And, like, there's an episode where the girls, like, perform at her friend's wedding, and they see that, like, all the band members are there. They've all moved on in life, but they're still together. And you got this feeling like, yeah, like, they're still going to be friends forever. They're always going to affect each other. And if you're just looking for a show about the magic of friendship, this is the best one. Fuck My Little Pony. Go watch K-On!
My next in the list is kind of about the opposite of the magic of friendship.
Excellent.
So my next movie in this list is a movie where it's one of those movies where you watch and you go, that guy is literally me. And Trixie, if you can try to guess what movie this is.
Are you talking about American Psycho again?
No, close though. It's Taxi Driver. Martin Scorsese's 1976 film Taxi Driver, starring Robert De Niro as Travis Bickle, the the guy that he drives a taxi and he decides he wants to shoot up a brothel and assassinate a politician. And I'm watching it. I'm go, that guy is literally me. I don't know. I think that people now they have really short attention spans. But what Taxi Driver is to me is it's sort of like an urban Western where Travis Bickle wants to be this Western hero, right? That is going to be this this Batman or this sort of a outlaw, fighting for justice. I'm blanking on the word right now, but the vigilante, like this vigilante sort of cowboy character in New York. And New York in the 70s was pretty bad. I mean, it was hell. And and so it's like this disaffected guy, right? He's driving taxis, right? He's in with the people on the streets. He's seeing just how bad it is, and he's seeing how all these people in power, how all these politicians, they don't care. Like, all the people in power, they literally do not care at all. And it really drives home this feeling of, like, is anyone gonna do anything? And Travis Bickle, I mean, he's a war vet. He's like a Vietnam War vet, and he just gets this feeling like nobody's gonna do anything, and if somebody's gonna do something, then it's got to be me. And so he takes on this role as, like, the cowboy. I mean, he gives himself the Mohawk haircut, which is like the Mohawk Indians and everything like that. It definitely sort of links itself to the Western genre in that sense, to the Western genre, but also to the sort of like the punk movement that was coming out in the 70s at that time. It has a really cool sort of like hybrid genre to it. and of course I'm not going to spoil it, but I mean, I figure that a lot of people sort of know how the film goes, but you know, it ends with the whole shootout, just like a lot of westerns, and it's about the character development and that sort of rising tension. I mean, just like how most westerns are. And there's a lot of really cool, as far as the character development with Travis Bickle goes, him taking the woman on the date to the porn theater, you know, how he's so just like, he's so distant from society. He doesn't really know what normal is. Like, he goes to this porn theater all the time and just watches it like it's a movie and really thinks nothing of it, to the point where he brings the woman there and he's like, you don't think this is normal? You know, like, he actually has no idea. And he is this sort of, you know, he is mentally ill. I mean, that's part of it. And also, just, I don't want to spoil too much of the movie for people, but De Niro just gives an absolute powerhouse performance. Martin Scorsese is in it too, and has some of the best lines, like talking about shooting his like wife in the pussy with this like 357 Magnum. Have you ever seen what this does to a pussy? You know, like Martin Scorsese's part in it is just great. And it was Jodie Foster's big breakout hit as well, as she played as a young prostitute, because he kind of falls, like, he sort of like thinks that he's going to save her. You know, she's like this damsel in distress.
Isn't this the movie where Jodie Foster sent the signals to that guy to kill Reagan?
Yeah.
Why would she do something like that?
I know, and it was 4 years before Reagan was president. You know, it's kind of weird how she was able to like know the future.
Right.
But no, Taxi Driver, just, gosh, it's just a movie. It's got a great soundtrack. De Niro is so good in it. The cinematography is just so spot on. It's got this like griminess to it. You know, it's like you always feel just, it's like wet and dirty, and yeah, I don't know. I don't know much else. It's a really good sort of urban western in that sense, you know. And I think that a lot of films have been inspired by Taxi Driver in some way, shape, or form. I mean, obviously Joker was inspired by Taxi Driver. People talk about that a lot. But Nightcrawler, I think, was also inspired by Taxi Driver. Like, it sort of spawned this trope of this, like, disaffected sort of loner vigilante type, you know, that you can see has a humongous influence in cinema now.
And then after that, Aquarius, it's David Duchovny hunting down Charles Manson in the 60s.
Huh.
It's a lot of fun.
I'll watch that.
It's 2 seasons. It's basically if, what's his name? Hank was in the 60s hunting Manson.
Right, Hank from Californication, who was also played by David Duchovny.
Yuu.
All right, well, I'm going to do my next one. Number 11 is the next show I'll be making a video about, Sangatsu no Lion, or March Comes Like a Lion. This is a show based on a manga aimed at older women originally, but it was adapted to anime at the request of the author by Akiyuki Shinbo, who I mentioned earlier as a very experimental director. People consider him an art house director, but he's really not. He's better described as postmodernist, more in line with French New Wave style in that he's trying to make entertaining media. Like, people will call him an auteur. He's the opposite. He's like, actually, I'm just trying to make this the most appealing it can possibly be. But, like, his version of that is just everything's experimental all the time. And what's so great about that style as applied to this show is that it's a fairly low-key interpersonal drama about a kid who is a shogi prodigy, shogi being like a Japanese version of chess, and his parents die when he's fairly young, and his foster father was like a pro shogi player who was like really hard on all of his kids about being good, and the fact that his foster son is not only better than his own kids but better than him eventually kind of ruins his relationship with all of them. So he goes off to live on his own, And basically, he's just like a totally depressed, dissociated person who life is kind of a living hell for him because it seems like he can't. Everything he does that he's good at makes other people miserable. He's constantly crushing people's dreams and making people hate him, and he doesn't know how to communicate other than through the game of shogi. But early on, he meets this trio of sisters who are themselves orphaned. One is like 20, one's in middle school, and one's like a 5 or 6 years old little kid. And like they invite him over for dinner one day just from like meeting him randomly somewhere, and like when he goes to their house. So the first episode of the show like sets the tone perfectly because it's about 13 minutes of no dialogue, just showing this kid's backstory with really impressionistic visuals, like, you know, getting into his head and emotions and all the trauma he's been through. And then he steps through the front door of these girls' house and the whole show turns pink and bright and colorful and everybody's having fun and, like, you know, they're having a great time. Then he leaves the house and it's like stark black and there's a storm happening outside. And it's like, so it's about like this kid experiencing this whiplash of, you know, like so much kindness he actually can't take it and starts trying to avoid it, but he keeps getting drawn back in. And it's sort of a show about the way that because of this kid's talent and the fact that he is like a decent person, people force him to be involved with them. They drag him out. They're trying to be a part of his life, and as the series goes on, you know, they start having an effect on him. He starts becoming more of like a person, and because he is really intelligent and really good at strategy, he is helpful to lots of people all the time. So, you know, it's really interesting in that angle, and it's also like simultaneously it's a drama, it's sort of a slice of life thing, but it's also a sport game show because there's like long ass shogi matches that, while I don't know the rules of shogi at all, are very easy to follow because of how impressionistic the visuals are, and just like how much it like leans into all the drama and all the context around the matches. So it feels like watching any of like the best sports media in terms of how hype you can get watching these matches, even not knowing how to play the game. But and it also can become like a cooking show sometimes, and like all kinds of stuff. It's just very broad because the author draws on like all kinds of different elements of life to incorporate into the story. And probably my favorite thing, and one of the most unique things about it, is that it has a lot of older characters. And actually, you'll kind of see this as a trend in shows I like, is that they have both older and younger characters. A lot of anime is just about teenagers. But like what makes a show able to survive the years is when you grow up and you can still watch it. And like the main character in this one is, I think, like 19 or so. So even he's closer to like a college age. I would say the show is probably aimed at like more college-age people, but you've got really old people in the show who have like whole histories and backstories that get fleshed out, and you see all like the effects they've had on the world in like this long period of their existence therein. And you know, it's just a show with tons of neat ideas where you feel like the author has met an uncharacteristically large number of people to draw inspiration from, and so it's very worldly. And that fact, and the fact that, again, the visuals are so experimental. There's certain locations that will get used all throughout the series, but every single time you see them, they're presented in a totally different way. Where like there's different angles, different lighting, different time of day, so that it always reflects the emotional tone of the scene. And like sometimes you'll be just shocked like how different the same place can feel when they've done that. So just like, it's had so much thought and effort and care put into it beyond what would ever be expected of a manga adaptation. So it made it one of my favorite anime. If you want to see something emotional, especially if you like cry porn. I generally usually don't like cry porn. A lot of people said that like this show just like had them fucking crying rivers the whole time. I didn't feel that extreme about it, and it's not necessarily sad. It has sad moments, but overall it's more of an uplifting thing. So I really love that about it. 50 episodes. The manga is still ongoing, so it does not have like a proper ending. I hope maybe it will even receive more episodes in the future, but I was satisfied with what I saw, so I would recommend it.
All right, I guess I'll do my number 11. And this is another just must see if you like film. And this was difficult for me. I'm a big fan of Coppola. And I think that the movie that really is sort of Coppola's, because it's easy to say that The Godfather films are like his magnum opus. But it's 3 movies. You need to watch it.
I like Apocalypse Now.
That's the movie that I have on the list. Is because it's so, I don't know, like it has this other kind of quality to it. It's a war movie, but it's based on Joseph Conrad's book, his novella Heart of Darkness. And like so much of it is just straight up taken from Heart of Darkness, obviously, but it's blended with the Vietnam War, because Heart of Darkness took place in like Africa during like British colonialism. It's a great book. It's not even that long. It's like 70 pages. So, I highly recommend reading it. It's a really good read. But, yeah.
I know there's also Spec Ops: The Line, the video game, is also based on that book.
Yeah. Yeah. And also the recent movie Ad Astra is based on Heart of Darkness as well. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. So, I mean, that Heart of Darkness kind of created this, and Heart of Darkness also got, like, it created this structure for storytelling, of kind of going deeper and deeper and deeper. And I guess maybe it didn't really create it, because you could also say, oh, that goes back to Dante's Inferno, which it kind of does.
I can see that comparison.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, like it does kind of go back to Dante's Inferno, but it's Willard, and Willard is played by Martin Sheen, is going into Vietnam to deeper and deeper and deeper to kill Colonel Kurtz, who is played by Marlon Brando. And it's about their journey, and it just gets crazier and crazier.
It's a very surreal film.
Yeah, it's
sort of absurdist theming, which I'm a big fan of any kind of like absurdist media, where like the point is that there is no point and you will never find a point, and life is scary and weird.
Yeah, it's about just how like war makes everybody insane. It's just sort of like how people just lose their minds, and then when they get to the ending point, it's Kurtz has this colony of all these like people, like this kind of like tribal people, and he's like the head of this tribe, and then Dennis Hopper just gives this amazing performance as this wartime photographer who's just sort of bought into Colonel Kurtz's bullshit, and he's going off. He goes, you know what Kurtz said to me, man? He said, what the middle word of life is if, man. And so I have a little story. So when I got my wisdom teeth taken out, supposedly, this is what I was told by my oral surgeon, is that after the surgery, I was just doing all the Dennis Hopper monologues from Apocalypse Now. I was pretending I was Dennis Hopper while I was under the influence of whatever the oral surgeon gave me. Which should indicate how many times I've seen Apocalypse Now. And you also just have the, Charlie don't surf. And
Apocalypse Now is the shortest feeling long-ass movie I've ever seen. Like, it has such a reputation for being like 2.5 or 2:45 or something like that hours long.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's just so fucking gorgeous. Like, every shot.
Yeah.
There's one part where it's just like bombs going off, or like fire, like looking like fireworks for like 15 straight minutes as characters like move through the darkness, and it is so captivating to watch because I can't imagine how they fucking made it. Like, which I know there's a whole movie about how they made it, but like I still can't imagine.
Yeah, Hearts of Darkness, and that's really, if you like Apocalypse Now, I definitely advise you watch the documentary Hearts of Darkness. But yeah, I think that was during, you're talking about the scene where it's something like Willard comes up to a guy and it's like, who's the commander of this post? And the guy looks at him and goes, ain't you? It's just like, wow. Wow. And then that's when also the guy on the boat was like, I just dropped my last tab. It's
definitely, that would be such a good acid movie.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I imagine a lot of people drop tabs to watch that movie because it feels like it would work. It's an experience of a film, and there's 3 different versions of it. The theatrical cut, the redo, and then the final cut. Now, I actually have not seen the final cut yet. But between the redo and the theatrical, I would advise the theatrical. But from what I've been told is that the final cut, it shaves about 20 minutes off of the redo, and everyone says that's the best version. So, yeah. So I've been meaning to get that Ultra HD Blu-ray of it to watch it. So I've been meaning to watch the final cut. But if you only have to choose between the theatrical and the redo, I would say choose theatrical.
I will probably say my favorite show of all time is Altered Carbon, which is it's a Netflix show based on a bunch of books. The central concept being about 300 years ago, humanity discovered technology that they could download their brain into, and now they can have whatever body, however many bodies they want.
Depending on how rich they are.
Yes.
Right.
You have to be really rich to have clones of yourself, to have good clones of yourself. And the story so it follows this guy named Takeshi Kovacs, who is he's this ex-paramilitary called an envoy, and the envoy's powers are kind of hard to explain, but he can see through walls sometimes. He is really good at getting information and just being like a scummy guy. That's not the...
He's like really hard-boiled detective.
Yeah.
The kind who shoot first, ask questions later type detective work.
It has a lot of fun twists and turns. Renee Elise Goldberry plays the... what does she play? Kel, the revolutionary leader. And it was a lot of fun. It's a really good show. And I think we are heading towards a type of future like Altered Carbon is, as we are all able to live longer.
All right. My next one is going to be number 10. The other coming-of-age story on my list, but a short and crazy one, Fooly Cooly. This is a 6-episode OVA that aired on Adult Swim a whole lot when I was a kid. And it's most famous for its soundtrack that basically put the band The Pillows on the map, because it's a Japanese punk rock band that the director was a fan of and scored most of the show with their music, and it makes the whole thing. But basically, Fooly Cooly is a story of a young boy. He's 12 years old. His older brother, who he was obsessed with and looked up to, who's a baseball star, moved to America, leaving him in his small town that he hates, babysitting his brother's ex-girlfriend, who's 3 years older than him, but acts like a manic pixie dream girl child. And so she's kind of relying on him, and he's basically constantly fed up with all the adults around him for acting like children. He's obsessed with being mature, and everyone's immature, until this alien woman on a Vespa rides into town and hits him in the head with a bass guitar, causing a robot to come out of his head to fight another robot that comes out of his head. And then the first robot, which had a TV for a head, she bashes it in the back of the head, and it becomes their maid. So the show is all kinds of just really insane experimental visuals. There's a part in the first and last episode where the show actually becomes a motion manga, and it's something that I think wouldn't be nearly as difficult to do today, but this was done in the year 2000 at the advent of using computer technology for animation, and is one of the most technically complex sequences that had been done at the time in anime. And there's all kinds of crazy CGI breaks, and just the art style is always shifting to reflect the tone. It's totally manic, super dense. It's a show that a lot of people watch for the first time, and they're like, I don't get it. It just seemed like a bunch of random bullshit. And then you watch it 3 more times, and you're like, all of that bullshit was not random. Every single thing mattered here. But it's so just fun to watch and lively and exciting, and it tells one of the most complete coming-of-age stories I've seen in just 6 episodes. The main thrust of Naoto's arc is basically learning that maturity doesn't mean acting cool and serious all the time. It means doing what you gotta do when the chips are down. And as he becomes somebody who can do that and confront the fact that the alien girl who he sort of falls in love with is a psychotic criminal, and he has to deal with the fact that he has fallen in love with someone who is just trying to take advantage of and use him. So that's an interesting part of it as well. It's got so much iconic imagery in it, and I've watched it this is the anime I've seen the most times by far, probably 12 to 15. Every image from it is permanently etched into my mind at this point. And yeah, I just think it's, in terms of like raw, explosive energy, you cannot do better with this, or than this, rather. It's a love it or hate it kind of show. There's a lot of people who don't get it, don't like it. If you do get it or like it, it will probably be one of your favorites, like it is one of mine. So, highly recommend you try it.
My number 10, and this was all of these were tough for me because, when people would say what's a list of, can you give me a list of movies to start watching if I want to get into films? I would write a list of 200 movies and be like, well, you can't call yourself a cinephile if you haven't seen this movie. Come on, and everything like that. And so making a list of 15 is really difficult for me. And so with my list, it's more how I'm thinking about it is sort of this is an entry point into this kind of film, or
some of that genre. In my list when we get to the front, where we're gonna start condensing whole directors into a tab. So I'm with you there. Yeah, and that's pretty much my entire list here. Is I'm condensing entire directors, and in some points, like the 400 Blows. I condensed an entire movement into one film. Because I could easily recommend you 15 French New Wave films, but that would kind of go against the whole purpose of this. But anyway, so my number 10 is 8.5 by Federico Fellini. And he came out with 8.5 in 1961 or 1962. I have the... here. No, I was wrong. 1963. So I have the Criterion edition right here. And he came out with this right after he made La Dolce Vita. And Federico Fellini started off as a neorealist film director, an Italian neorealism. There were a lot of big directors at that time, like Vittorio De Sica and Roberto Rossellini. And Fellini actually worked on Bicycle Thieves, which is probably the most famous Italian neorealist film. And he got his start making films of that nature. He had films like La Strada, I Vizzoloni. So I'm going to straight up say I've never heard of Italian neorealism. So, what are the defining traits of that?
Okay. You could watch my video.
Okay, I'll do that.
but Italian neorealism came as a sort of pushback against the sort of the propagandistic films of Mussolini. And so Italian neorealism was about the sort of everyday people, the working class stories of Italy and
blue collar Russian movies or Italian movies, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, a lot of them were sort of socialist or communist. The people that made these films. Right. Fellini himself, he got into a little bit of controversy because he wasn't really nearly as political as some of these other directors. And what happened with Fellini is that he made all these very sort of movies about regular people and these but they're very expressive films. And actually, in his film Nights at Cabiria, he worked with another Italian director who I'm going to bring up a little bit later, named Pier Paolo Pasolini, who was a Marxist, but who was a based Marxist. And Federico Fellini in the 60s took a whole different turn, and he just went outrageous. And he started that with La Dolce Vita, and he perfected it with 8.5. So 8.5 is about a film director, an art film director. It's obviously sort of about Fellini himself.
Self-insert.
Yeah, exactly. And it's about an art film director who's asked to make the science fiction movie, and he really doesn't feel it. He's having this whole crisis of this kind of creative crisis. He has a mistress and a wife, and that is sort of, not really working itself out too well. He's looking back on his life, and so it's a mix of fantasy and dream and memory and reality. And he blends it all just
sounds like a Satoshi Kon movie. Have you seen any of his?
Oh yeah, I've seen Satoshi Kon films.
We'll get into on my list.
Yeah, and 8.5. I mean, there's a reason why. There is a very good reason why it's considered by critics and filmmakers worldwide to be in the top 10 best movies of all time. Sometimes people might say, oh, they're overrated or something like that. 8.5 is not. 8.5 is just, it's super fun to watch. It's so just,
They should have called it 10 out of 10.
Well, and here's the funny thing about 8.5 is that you've seen Pulp Fiction, right? Mm-hmm. So the dance between John Travolta and Uma Thurman? That is the dance from 8.5. It's completely it's a reference to 8.5. Yeah. And it's, these Italian movies, like the thing is like when you're looking at like art films from different countries, right? France can be a little bit sort of like cold, and same with Germany. They can be sort of cold, like you have like Michael Haneke in like Austria, making The Seventh Continent, which I love, but it's very cold and it's very sort of like distancing itself from the viewer. And then in Italy, they're so exuberant and they're so fun. Like all these
sounds like more my kind of speed. I've always been kind of afraid of a lot of the French movies for that reason you describe, of just like the very distant cinematography and stuff. So I would like to see some more up close type foreign film.
Like the Italian films are extremely exuberant, and like a great film from Fellini that I don't see people talk about that much is Roma. And it's just, it doesn't have a plot line at all. It's sort of like it feels like a symphony of, but it's a film symphony, if that makes sense. Let me just watch the opening to 8.5 has probably it has the most memorable opening sequence.
Because I'm pretty sure you just said that about that
Touch of Evil. I know. Touch of Evil. No, but see, that's an unbroken shot, right? And 8.5 is like, it opens up with this. It's a 3 minutes on the Criterion Channel's YouTube channel, Criterion Collection's YouTube channel, and they have the first like 3 minutes on there, and it's a surrealist sort of thing. And Fellini was a big inspiration on David Lynch, if that, if that kind of helps you contextualize some things. Antonioni, check out Dino Risi, and Elio Petri, and plenty of like really great Italian directors at this time that were making these very artistic and also very fun movies.
That's probably the one I'm the most curious about that I haven't seen that you've described.
It has a lot to say, and it's really just engaging on so many, intellectual, emotional.
Would you compare this director to Jodorowsky? How do you say?
Jodorowsky.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was definitely influenced by Fellini, because Fellini was before Jodorowsky was. Yeah, no, he was definitely influenced by him.
Cool.
Yeah,
Fellini. So I was getting like a little bit of El Topo vibes off of that.
Oh yeah, I love El Topo. Unfortunately, didn't make the list. That is a bit of a deeper cut when it comes to film.
My next favorite is my favorite comedy show, and that is the IT Crowd. Because, hello IT, have you tried turning it off and on again? That's all I'm going to say about that.
Good show.
It's really fun. Moss is good.
Well, my number 9 is actually my outright favorite anime. I know it's weird that it's not at number 1, but I was really trying to be like, I want them to be listed by like how necessary it is for you to see it. So my number 9 is Shirobako, and this is a 26-episode show from 2014-15 that is about making anime. It takes place in an anime studio. It has an ensemble cast, but the mainly focuses on 5 girls who had a K-On!-esque club in high school where they were making anime, and we start off with like an opening scene that's very much like playing off of the atmosphere of K-On!, which then smash cuts to now they're in their 20s and they're all fucking miserable because they actually work in the anime industry, and it's just about like basically the show just bounces between all these different perspectives. Each episode will kind of have a problem that they're dealing with centrally that spreads out through the whole studio, because when you're making animation and there's like 100 people involved, then any one thing that any one person does is going to affect everybody else. And so it's all about that, like the chaos and the domino effect of working with so many different people in order to get something done on something that is simultaneously a technical endeavor, but also an artistic endeavor, which is a very difficult place to be, because the kind of people who, are capable of it are also not capable of it, is a way of putting it. So, everybody who works in anime is a little bit touched, a little bit insane. And the show is directed by a guy who is typically a comedy director. And this show, I guess I would consider Shirobako a comedy. It is laugh out loud funny most of the time. It's definitely not a drama, but it's more of like a stress simulator. Like, it's a show about work, and it feels like work. And I'm sure that the reason I didn't put this higher on the list is I would not recommend this to anyone until you've already seen a decent amount of anime. And it will mean more to you the more you've seen and the more you know about it, because it references everything. Like, it references all kinds of deep cuts from anime history, tons of creators in the industry. Like, almost every character who's not one of the main 5 girls is based on someone. So, like, if you know the directors and the animators and everything, then that enriches it a lot. But it's the ultimate love letter to anime, because you get to see every single job that is on production. You get to meet, who's doing it, what's it like. You see just like every single conceivable angle. The main character is a production runner, so she's just like involved in every step of it, because she just has to run things around between all the different sections and check on what's going on and make sure people are doing their job, which seems like the most simplistic job in the industry, but it's actually by far the most complicated, because you have to have some level of understanding of what everyone does. So, and be able to communicate with them and get them to do their work. So, and Japanese culture is very passive aggressive. People don't like to be aggressive with other people, and in an industry like this, that is very much a problem. So it's a lot of it is just people like fuming at one another, like seething, trying to get them to do stuff. And it's a lot of fun, because there's certain characters who are just like fuck ups, who are always going to make it hell for everyone else involved, but like fuck ups in a way where it's like, well, on the one hand, you're not the best hands for the job, but on the other hand, we need people desperately and we can't afford to lose you, So it's a lot of fun in that regard. And the producer of the series, Kenji Horikawa, is the president of the studio that made the anime, PA Works. He is incredibly well connected throughout the industry and like just knows all these people who he like interviewed and stuff to base characters on them. So there's tons of great creative advice in the show, particularly from this one older character who's based on an animator. Back in the 90s, he was absurdly fast, and he talks about how like at the time, all the animators were like, they were super prideful about it, and they were all trying to like compete with each other to see like who can do more cuts faster and stuff, like because you don't make money in anime. And part of I think the message of the show is kind of to educate the sort of entitled youth of the industry, because there's a lot of talk about how animators are very underpaid, and this is true. They definitely deserve to be paid more, because it's kind of inhumane, the wages that they make. But at the same time, people have to understand that there just isn't money in this thing. Like, anime is small potatoes, and the trickle down is not very, it doesn't come down to the people at the bottom that well. And there's a character who's an animator, one of the 5 main girls, who's struggling because of the fact that, like, if she tries to go as fast as she has to, then the artwork suffers. But if she can be an amazing artist, it just takes too long. And it's like, you literally can't do this job if you have that problem for too long. And there's a scene where this older animator, based on something that the character he's based on had said in real life, it's just like, focus on speed. Don't worry about getting better. That comes from doing it. Like, the more you do it, the better you get. So just do it faster, Not to the point that you're sacrificing quality completely, but like, if you can practice speed when you're young, you will always slow down when you get older. So you will not have time to get faster later. And that's advice that has helped me massively throughout my own career. So there's lots of things in the show that inspire me. And actually, the last time I watched it, I decided to become a studio head, which is now I why I now have this channel called Yig Studio, and I run a studio. So, because despite the fact that everything in the show says working in this industry is hell, the like penultimate episode is like the girl going around to everyone and just being, why do you work in anime? And like everybody has different answers, but it all just comes down to like, well, I love anime. Like it's always what it comes down to. It's like not even that these people are like otaku. A lot of them literally have one show they like. Like the main girl just is obsessed with this 70s show about called Andy's Chucky that's based on Ganba no Boken, which is a real anime from the 70s, but it's about like just like anthropomorphic animals on like an epic adventure kind of thing, like a classical family show. So you know, that's like the only show she really cares about, but she loves it so much that it inspires her to get involved in the industry. So like you see lots of different angles on what kind of people are into anime and why and how they work on it. Again, it's my favorite anime, the ultimate love letter to the medium, and the only reason I wouldn't say... I do think everyone should see it. I don't think you will understand it enough to get the most out of it until you've seen at least enough anime to appreciate like how anime be, you know?
Well, I mean, that's a good sort of comparison then, because 8.5 is about making movies, and then Shirobako is about making anime. And to kind of go on with this associative sort of logic, my next film is Japanese, and it's one of my favorite films by Akira Kurosawa, and I have it right here, and it is Ikiru, or Ikiru. I don't really know the proper way to say it, because I don't speak Japanese. But it stars a longtime collaborator with Akira Kurosawa, Takashi Shimura, who is also in the original Godzilla film, and I mean he's been in a lot of Kurosawa films. He was in Drunken Angel. He was in Seven Samurai. Ikiru. I believe he was also in Redbeard. I mean, he's in a ton of Akira Kurosawa movies, and he was just a big time Japanese actor back in the day. And Ikiru is about a bureaucrat that learns that he's dying. And so he decides he's gonna, like, he's working in this bureaucracy, right? That's really not helping society. It's a very anti-government film in a lot of ways. So you know, it's pretty based. And he decides he's gonna he's gonna have his last thing that he does on Earth is gonna be something to benefit society. So he decides that the last thing he wants to do is to build a playground, and that's the movie. It's just a character's sort of study of him, and it's about him dying and trying to do this last good thing. And it is a movie. I don't want to even say more about it. You have to experience it. It's a movie that's going to make you bawl your eyes out. That's all I'm going to say.
I think Ikiru means live.
Yeah.
Or something like that, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And, you know, and I wanted to go against the grain with, like, Kurosawa as well. Because, you know, when people say Kurosawa, they're like, yeah, watch Rashomon. Oh, yeah, he was in Rashomon, too. You know, he's in a bunch of Kurosawa films. But it's like, they say, watch Seven Samurai, watch Rashomon. And I'm like... Yojimbo. So since everyone's going to be telling you to watch these films... I just want to kind of counterpoint and say, you know, Kurosawa made these incredible humanist dramas. Like, and Ikiru is just amazing. It's a film that's going to last with you for your entire life. So yeah, so I'll leave it at that. Go watch it immediately. If you're listening to this podcast or watching this video, stop it right now, watch Ikiru, and then come back and finish it.
Then I have Daybreak, which is it's not a great show, but it bought into the nostalgia of Ferris Bueller in like 2019.
Plus the popularity of The Walking Dead.
Yeah, that as well. Yeah. But it's just the main character is essentially Ferris Bueller in a zombie apocalypse, and the principal of his school is Matthew Broderick, who is revealed to be a kid-eating monster. And it's a fun show. It's not great.
It's not great, but I like it.
Yeah,
it's not great, but it's in my 15 things you need to watch before you.
Right,
die.
you have to watch it.
It shows you how to survive.
Okay, well, If anybody really wants to watch your whole list, I can't wait to hear what they say.
I enjoyed the first episode of that, so I've seen it. All right, my number 8 is the weirdest show on my list, the most artsy and experimental, which is Serial Experiments Lain. This was a 13-episode anime from 1998 that is has some of the most unique visual presentation and unique audio presentation. It goes really all out on like crazy sound effects and creating a sonic environment. But it's about this girl named Lain, who is probably the most dissociated character I've ever seen in anything. She basically just spends all her time zoning out and not speaking. So the first episode is a lot of just like silently watching her walk through the world in the perspective of like what it looks like to her, which is very washed out and distant and noisy and like, she gets a email because the main theme of the show is computers, the dawn of the computer age. The show was made in 98, but it's set like probably 10, 15 years down the line from that. And I say that because of the fact that it's so incredibly prescient about how the internet was going to be. It predicted Anonymous. It predicted like the nature of 4chan and like all kinds of shit. Like, and partially that might be because it affected those things that like the internet decided to copy Lain. Cause, like within the context of the show, Lain basically gets on the internet and becomes a god on the internet because she's so good at it. Whereas she's like basically a non-entity in real life. Who like when we first see her room, it's like there's nothing in it except for like a few teddy bears on the bed, and she just puts on a kigurumi and lays in bed, and that's her life. But her dad is a big computer nerd, so one day she starts hearing rumors from kids in class that this girl who committed suicide has been emailing them, and she becomes curious about this, so she gets a computer, she gets an email, and starts upgrading her computer because the email is telling her, come into the wired, which is what they call the internet. Like, cast away your real body and come into the internet is the ad, basically. So she starts basically through each episode getting deeper and deeper into computers and fabricates a totally other persona on the internet who's like tough and cool and always doing research and knowing everything and like trying to change the world, do hacker shit and stuff like that. But as the separation between her real self and her internet self and the way she's perceived online gets out of control, it creates other versions of her that like functionally exist because they are so extant within the context of the internet's narrative that they start affecting her real life without her being able to do anything about it. And so then she starts like continuing to try to become more powerful to now stop that. And and when I say more powerful, I mean this is all very esoterically presented. So it's a show that the most common reaction people have is I had to watch it 4 times to completely understand it. And like I was one of those pretentious kids who watched it when I was 16 and was like, I'm pretty sure I get the point. And then like every 4 years I watch it again and I'm like, I did not get the point last time. But yeah, like it's very philosophical. It plays on all sorts of weird and interesting ideas. And again, was super predictive of the future because I just think the writer Chiaki Kanaka was like someone who was actually using the internet to like the fullest extent in 1998. Like he really understood what was going on there and what was happening and was able to represent it really well. So it's the best. It's still probably one of the best shows about the internet and how the internet works. And I think maybe it's because it came out so early that it was able to sort of abstract a lot of that stuff that you don't have to worry about the literal like way that computers currently function because the abstract elements of it still makes sense in terms of like the effects the internet has on society and on the on people's psyches. And Lain is in real life, just like in the anime, worshipped as a god by like a cult. There are Lainists all over the internet you can find. So I love Lain the most for the effect that it has had on society, like a self-fulfilling prophecy of like creating the idea of a god in the internet that is just some little dissociated girl, you know? So
Yeah.
it's a lot of fun. Well, it's not a lot of fun. It's actually kind of a waking nightmare, but I like that about it. So
it's my next film, sort of. I mean, we're going on this like associative thing where my next film was a movie made in the late 90s the early 90s, and it was about the late 90s, but it had a lot to say about how technology would be in the late 90s, and I actually think it really was talking about technology that we would get in the late 2000s or the 2010s, because, you know, people in the 20th century thought we would advance faster than we actually did, you know, in a sort of sense. And it's the movie here. I'm gonna get it really fast. I made a video on it. I'm actually quite proud of my video on it. It's a movie called Until the End of the World. So it's a film by Wim Wenders, who is one of my favorite directors. He directed Paris, Texas, Wings of Desire, Kings of the Road, The American Friend, Alice in the Cities. Just an absolutely amazing director. And Until the End of the World is pretty much, it's not pretty much, it is his magnum opus. It was kind of a lost magnum opus because the theatrical cut that came out was 2.5 hours long. Now, do you want to guess how long the actual film is? Like the director's cut of it is? Just take
4 hours.
4 hours and 47 minutes.
Jesus
so
Christ.
Yeah, so the cut that you should watch the film is almost 5 hours long. Now, you can cut it, like, there's two kind of distinct parts of this movie that you can, like, cut it up into, and you can treat it like two films, you know? I mean, that's how I watched Justice League, because I watched it like it was two movies. But, you know, Until the End of the World, I sat through the entire film. I've seen it several times. So I've sat through the whole thing just in one sitting many times. I absolutely love it. It stars Sam Neill, Solveig Domartin, William Hurt, Max von Sydow, and Jean Moreau. And the first half of it is this, like this worldwide road trip. It's basically a road trip type film where Solveig Domartin is going from like Italy to France to Germany to Spain and Portugal, and then to Moscow and China and Japan, and then to the States, and then to Australia. You know, it's like this worldwide road trip where she's kind of chasing after William Hurt, Sam Neill, and Rudiger Vogler, who's a private investigator, chasing after her. It's like all these people sort of chasing after each other, and it's like this kind of like this romantic triangle that's going on, and hitmen and stuff are all involved, and it's really exciting. It's got a lot of like references to, you know, to movies of different places. Like when they get to Japan, it references a lot of like Ozu's films, which I'm a huge fan of Ozu, and it's super fun. And then the second half, it takes a big dramatic turn, but it's just as interesting. And the point of the movie, and a lot of what the movie's about, is about dreams, and it's about technology. And so basically what William Hurt has been doing for the entire film is he has this new technology that his family has developed that allows pictures to be taken that blind people can see. So essentially he's taking pictures with this device that they put, like, his mom is blind, and they can sort of jack her into this construct, and she can see it almost like she's dreaming it. And so they get to the Australian outback where they have this like compound going on, and Max von Sydow is his dad, and Jean Moreau is his mom. And what ends up happening is that they find a way to record their own dreams, and then they become drug addicts to their dreams, like watching their dreams. It is really cool. And one of the big parts of this movie is that Wim Wenders used NHK, which is the big Japanese television studio. they had all this like in the early 90s, they had all this like really cutting edge technology to essentially like deep fry images, like what we would call today is like deep frying. But he was using it to really sort of like take these video images and really push them to their limits to make them this like super strange experimental type of images and everything like that. And so it's got this.
The second most interested I've been in a movie you talked about that I hadn't heard of, because it sounds like a total trip.
No, yeah, it's a total trip, and one of the biggest things, right, is that you think 5-hour long movie, worldwide road, you know, like it takes place all over the world. The budget was only $20 million. Like it was a fairly low budget, especially for a movie like this, and it's got original music in it from the Talking Heads, Nick Cave, U2, cool. Like a whole bunch of like gosh, I don't know. I did it all in my video on it, but it's got like one of the most insane soundtracks. Depeche Mode, Elvis Costello, Lou Reed, like all these like just
basically every cool musician of the era.
Yeah, exactly. Every cool musician of the era, and made a original song for this, and Patti Smith as well. But like one of the things, like, and what's funny about this is that Wenders, I mean, obviously Wenders was pretty well known by this time because he made Paris, Texas, and he had made Wings of Desire, both just absolute masterpieces. But he just sent out letters to all these bands that he liked, asking them to, you know, if they wanted to make music for him. And he sent out like 19 letters or something like that, thinking that like maybe like 1 or 2 would respond. And almost all of them responded and said, "Yeah, we got something for you." And Wim Wenders, the director of this, he had directed music videos for U2 because "Far Away So Close" was that U2 song, and it was actually based on Wim Wenders' movie Wings of Desire. So he knew U2, and they were filming. I want to say it was Achtung Baby. In Berlin at the time where Wenders was living, and they would hang out at the same cafe. And so he saw Bono and The Edge there and the guys, and so he went up to them, and he started talking to them about his movie, and he was like, "I'm making this film," and you know, and he was like, they were looking at him like, "This sounds good, but you know, if you can actually get something like this made, like it sounds super ambitious." And so Bono told him, he was like, "All right," he says, "send me like a cut of the movie, you know, after you've got it made, and I'll see what I can do." And so he sent him a cut of the movie after he got it made, and then he said Bono sent him back a tape, and it was the title track to the film, Until the End of the World, which ended up becoming a hit single for U2. So that's great. Yeah, and it's just, and actually, I think that the soundtrack for it made more money than the actual movie.
I'm not even surprised by that. Yeah. The roster there.
Yeah, I mean, you're Nick Cave, U2, Depeche Mode, Elvis Costello, Lou Reed. I mean, come on. Like, of course, everyone was buying the soundtrack for it in 1991 or whenever it was. Yeah, 1991. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But anyways, yeah, that's my number 8.
The next is one of the movies I have on here, and it's Moonrise Kingdom, the Wes Anderson film.
Wait, before you say anything, you know that I'm friends with the lead actor of that.
Wow, really?
I did not know that.
Yeah, he helped me out on my video on Moonrise Kingdom.
Wow.
That's awesome.
That's really cool. Well, I'm watching that video after this because that's one of my favorite movies as well.
Yeah, and then I have like my audio cut kind of messed up, but I have like a whole conversation with him on SoundCloud that I have linked under the video of Moonrise Kingdom.
Well, my number 7 is going to be one of the anime that most of the audience will probably have heard of, Cowboy Bebop. One of the very first shows that I was exposed to through being the first show on Adult Swim on Cartoon Network back in 2001. I kind of credit, like, when I describe to people, like, how long I've been an anime fan, I count it from the moment I saw Cowboy Bebop for the first time. And it's just the most lived in universe for a sci-fi show, because it takes place in a fairly far off future where we discovered how to create warp gates but something went wrong in the process of doing this, and Earth basically got ruined. It's constantly raining meteors on Earth, so the terrain's always changing, and only like poor folks live there. So most people have gone off into space, but space itself has taken the like. Basically, this is the grungiest sci-fi show ever, where like everywhere just looks like a Western movie or like a shithole, and unless it's like a space casino or something. And the main characters are broke all the time because they're bounty hunters who are flying around in a spaceship, but like they make a lot of money and spend a lot of money on collateral damage, fixing their ships and everything. So they're always just skating by, despite the fact that they're like the coolest bounty hunters in the world. But the best way I can describe like what makes Cowboy Bebop great is the director Shinichiro Watanabe is the Quentin Tarantino of anime. It's like everything is cobbled together from references to other classic things. So like if you are a cinephile, you will get tons and tons and tons of references out of watching this show. But none of it feels blatant. All of it is so well baked into the universe that it feels just natural being Cowboy Bebop. And it plays with lots of different genre in different episodes, where like there's a film noir one, there's like the horror episode, the horror comedy episode. So like it goes to all these different film tropes, but explores them in just such unique ways by using this setting that it kind of feels like nothing else. And it has just the coolest main characters. They're just like the most fun to watch, badass. We got Spike Spiegel, whose whole philosophy is heavily based on Bruce Lee and his "be like water" mantra and everything. You've got Jet Black, who's like the kind of hard ass former cop. So his episodes always are like hard boiled detective, like former cop type stuff. Faye, who's the femme fatale, who's absolutely fucking out of her mind and a criminal. And she was cryogenically frozen for like 50 years, so she's like also a fish out of water in the future. And yeah, just like everything it explores and does is so, despite being so couched in references, feels so unique because of the visuals and sound. Oh, and the soundtrack, which is what put Yoko Kanno, my favorite and probably the most famous anime composer, on the map. Kanno's specialty is that when she goes into a show, she, like, particularly with Cowboy Bebop, she had never really listened to jazz music ever. And she was asked to create a jazz soundtrack, so she learned everything there is to know about jazz and made 4 albums worth of it, which are today, like, if you look at lists of, like, recommended jazz albums, they're all on there. So, like, it's crazy how well she's able to capture genres, just by learning about them and like traveling the world and listening to different cultures' music and ripping stuff off a lot of the time. But it is what it is. You gotta write a lot of songs to fill out an anime soundtrack. But the OP and many of the key songs from the show are just absolutely legendary. So the soundtrack alone for Cowboy Bebop would be worth watching the show for. But the art design, the feel of the whole thing, it really stays with you. It's a show that it's told in a very emotional way, and there's only about 5 episodes that have like an actual arcing plot throughout the show, but that plot has so much impact by way of being so, appearing so few times that it really shakes you when you see these characters you love having to like deal with real shit, and it's got a pretty classic ending. So yeah, Cowboy Bebop is like almost impossible to go wrong with. This is the one show I could recommend to literally anybody, and the only people who aren't gonna like it are gonna be people with heinously bad taste. So I've just never heard of someone being like, Cowboy Bebop sucks. Like, a few people might think it's overrated, but it's not. It's actually underrated, if anything, because I mean, this show came out in '98 once again, and it feels impossible. Like the level of detail that's in it just wouldn't be done ever again, because like it was basically Studio Sunrise, who is the studio most capable of throwing an endless amount of money at a show, but they mostly do robot shows that are geared around selling toys. They do all the Gundam shows. They do all kinds of stuff that is meant to sell stuff. So when this show came out, it was basically because Evangelion had come out in 95, and I'll talk more about that later, but it basically created the idea of late night anime, of shows that run in later time slots and are like a little bit more adult or a little bit more anime-esque and are also more experimental and original. And because of Eva being so out there, the director Shinichiro Watanabe, who was like kind of a rising, not particularly known, but known to people within the industry, star, was told, like, as long as it has spaceships in it, you can do whatever you want. And so, but that level of freedom made it also like one of the most expensive shows out there. And he only gets to make an anime like once every 6 years because his shows are so expensive. But he would later do Samurai Champloo, which is in the same way that Cowboy Bebop primarily fuses space and westerns. It also is like a reference to all kinds of other film, though. Samurai Champloo is hip hop and samurai, but also tons of other stuff in there. So, and then his third show is Space Dandy, which is just oh man, actually I feel like I should have listed Space Dandy instead of Cowboy Bebop, actually, because it's even more like artsy and experimental and just a really fun time. Particularly the second season of Space Dandy is consistently Kino. The first season is not as consistent, but the second one is. So yeah, I highly recommend all three of those shows in the order of Cowboy Bebop's the most like beloved and respected. Space Dandy is not trying to be like as grounded or realistic or like dirty as Bebop, but it's way more experimental. Every episode has a different director, and like every art housey guy got to work on it. So it goes really far flung into weird sci-fi ideas and unique animation concepts. So yeah, and Samurai Champloo, if you like samurai and hip hop, you absolutely have to watch that one as well. And also, that show is one of the most influential soundtracks of all time because the producer Nujabes, who did a lot of the beats, basically like created the modern idea of lo-fi hip hop that everyone copies. Like people are cribbing either him or Jay Dilla when they make lo-fi beats. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I have Cowboy Bebop on DVD.
Excellent.
Yeah. Excellent. I have to keep all the Kinos from every genre around me at all times. Yeah. But so my number 7 is, I'm not going to speak much on this because this movie speaks for itself. And it's a movie that if you want to get into film, if you want to be a cinephile, if you want to say that you're a fan of movies, you're going to have to watch this film. There's no way around it. Like, a lot of times I'll say, like, yeah, you can kind of take it or leave it. Like plenty of people didn't see this movie, and we're perfect cinephiles. But ever since this movie came out, if you say that you love movies, you have to watch this film, and that is Come and See. Come and See is just... It's about a Belarusian partisan. It's a Russian film, a Soviet movie. Came out in the 80s, 85, I think. And it's about a boy who joins the Belarusian partisans against the Nazis in World War II. And he's this bright-eyed young boy, right? Joins these partisans to fight off the big bad guys. And he gets his gun by digging in a mass grave and finding a gun from a dead soldier so that he can join. And
that's pretty grim.
Yeah, it gets more grim.
Excellent.
The movie is about how he gets separated from his group, and then he witnesses a genocide.
That's how much do we witness of this genocide?
We witness a lot.
Oh,
and one of the things in the film is that they use like real weapons. So they were shooting real bullets, and there's flamethrowers. It was real flamethrowers or burning down these buildings. And
that's nuts. How, like, I guess that's Soviet filmmaking for you, or what? Like,
that's Soviet filmmaking for you. And it is, gosh, it is one of the most affecting, disturbing films you'll see. They did kill some real animals on camera, as I said, Soviet filmmaking, and it has this poetic storytelling element to it, where it feels like this poem of death, this poem of war, of suffering, of just hopelessness, of this, and also of fate. And you'll know when you get to the end where it's very fatalistic in a sense, but there are just some images in this movie that are going to stick in your head, and they will never leave you for the rest of your life.
I'm terrified to try to watch this movie. Sounds like a fucking nightmare.
It is a nightmare, but that's why I say you have to watch this film. It's a must. It is an absolute must see. Yeah, I mean, but it's not a fun time.
I'm scared. I'm a baby. I don't want to.
You have to. The Kino Corner said it himself. It's a must.
Right.
But that's all I'm gonna say about it. It's an experience. You gotta get in there and you have to experience it.
All right. Next, we have my favorite detective show, which is not Altered Carbon. It's called Luther, and it's about John Luther, who is played by Idris Elba, and it's 2 seasons, I think 6 episodes total, but it has the best depiction of how PTSD and mental illness works in a show. Because the show begins with John Luther maybe killing a serial killer, and he's in a coma, and no one knows if he actually pushed this guy. And so he's on thin ice in his detective work, and it takes up a lot of toll on him. He's constantly thinking about it. And then the guy wakes up, and is like, oh, Luther, guess what I remember? And then that becomes a whole thing. He's fighting to keep his wife with him the whole time. It's a very well-written show. Also, the theme song, Paradise Circus by Massive Attack, is very good.
I like Massive Attack.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
So for my number 6, I'm basically doing a whole director because I couldn't pick just one of his shows. The most acclaimed director of the last 15 years or so to make a splash is Masaaki Yuasa. And the show I was initially going to put on the list was going to be Ping Pong, because it's an 11-episode sports anime that I wanted to choose to represent all sports anime, because it's super experimental and weird looking and cool, and the matches really push animation and sound design into some crazy highs. It's got moments that'll just make all the hairs on your body stand on end kind of thing, really thrilling to watch. But more importantly than that, as sports narratives go, so the thing about sports anime is there's a lot of good ones, but the themes tend to pretty much be the same. There's only so many things you can really say about sports narratives, like messages about talent and how it affects people who, people who are training all the time versus people who have natural gifts, or the different emotional states of people who compete in sports and all that kind of stuff coming to a head. And it explores those themes very richly with also great dialogue. Just a well-written show, which is an extreme rarity in that genre. So if you don't hate the fact that it looks super weird, it's my favorite sports anime. But I couldn't leave it at that with this director, because I also really love his film The Night is Short, Walk On Girl, which is the best way I can describe it is a drunken party that lasts through a night that is obviously a lot longer than a night, but it's presented as one night. And it's this girl who's just kind of exploring the town, just meeting people, throwing herself into situations and seeing what's going on while getting drunk nonstop. So the whole first 40 minutes of the movie is just this girl going from place to place and getting drunker and drunker with people, and everything getting weirder and more experimental with the visuals and stuff, and more lively as it goes. And then it kind of goes into an arc of the college that she goes to and exploring some characters and their scenarios there. It's a movie that's sort of set in chapters, but it's man, I can't really even. I got really shit faced while I was watching this movie because the character kept drinking, so I kept drinking, and man, I was just having a time drinking along this movie. But the more well-known anime that shares visual similarities to it, and is from based on a book by the same author, is the Tatami Galaxy, which is a show about a guy who spends his 2 years in college basically being a social outcast and hanging out with this little gremlin guy who they decide to just start fucking up everyone else's good time because they can't have a good time. And the first episode is the dialogue happens at a mile a minute. You can barely read the fucking subtitles on the show because they're going so fast. And it super condenses 2 whole years of this guy's life into one episode, at the end of which he dies, and the second episode then goes back through those 2 years, but he joined a different club, and things are slightly different. And so the whole show is like each episode looping us back through different potential existences that he could have had in college until he starts figuring out what he's doing wrong and trying to fix it, and slowly losing his mind in the process as he realizes he's in like a multiverse kind of situation. So
that reminds me. That reminds me of a Polish movie that I really like, called Blind Chance. It's by Krzysztof Kieślowski, and it's not on the list because he's a little bit more of a deep cut. But Kieślowski is I'm a huge stan for Kieślowski. But Blind Chance is about how this guy's life would be completely different, depending upon whether or not he gets on a train, like on a subway.
That sounds like a fun time.
Yeah, it's a really good movie.
But yeah, so Tatami Galaxy is probably the most beloved of Yuasa's shows among college students. Like anyone who is ever socially awkward in college, this is like their go-to. But I personally favor the other two I mentioned. He also did a show called Kaiba, which is a really interesting sci-fi show that's set in a I think people have compared it to like Minority Report or something like that. But basically, people have chips in there. Like you can download yourself into a chip and switch bodies that way. I guess it's kind of like that
like
show,
Altered Carbon, like
Altered Carbon. But it's way more weird visually. It's like everything looks like a retro '60s cartoon, and like it's just like really colorful and explosive, and like you're seeing stuff that like you can understand that like, oh, that's a train, but it don't look like no train, like everything looks really weird and cool, and it explores like all of this guy's shows are a lot more willing to dive into like sexual extremeness and stuff like that in a way that anime usually doesn't, and he uses the weird art style to kind of like tackle these more grown-up topics. He also directed Devilman Crybaby, which while it is a very solid Devilman adaptation, I don't think it's Kino compared to his other work, but it does have some of the craziest sex and violence scenes that you'll ever watch in the first episode.
Well, I'll be talking about some sex and violence a little bit later.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
But Masaaki Yuasa basically, for a long time, it seemed like he could do no wrong. He eventually created his own studio, and some of the films that have his name on them from that studio, I'm not as in love with some of his other work. My brother disagrees with me. He thinks everything he's done is a masterpiece, so, take it however you will. But he is... and he also directed Mind Game, which is one of the most, like, postmodern experimental films. It's the most accurate stream of consciousness, like it feels like reading Ulysses as an anime, basically. It's like, it's really fucking trippy and heady, but also just, like, fun and bombastic. So I would probably to like film buffs, that would be the one I'd recommend, because it was like his first major directing job in 2004, and ever since then I think he's been trying to tone it down, because it's like just did every conceivable idea in that movie. But Masaaki Yuasa, everything he's done is worth watching.
So I did have a singular movie for my number 6, but I'll just sort of like kind of follow in your footsteps here. and make my number 6 just a director as well, because this was, it was too difficult for me for this. So I had Andrei Rublev here, but I'm just going to make number 6 Tarkovsky. Andrei Tarkovsky, who is probably the most well-known Soviet film director, at least like Soviet art film director in the West. Obviously there were movies and stuff that did better than his in the Soviet times, like The Diamond Arm and stuff. It was a huge hit back in the day in the USSR. But Tarkovsky has just lasted, through time. I mean, incredibly well. And the movies that I really, really like by him, and I think that everyone should watch. My favorite film by him is Zerkalo, which is Mirror in English, and with Mirror, it's got this. I know I said this about the other film, but it's got this like poetic kind of editing. It doesn't really have a normal narrative structure. It follows a boy and his mom, and then the boy is grown up, but it's all from like a sort of first person perspective, and his wife is played by the same actress as who played his mom. And it has this whole thing to do with basically like father and son, mother and son, ancestors, sort of how time moves in this like weird way. It goes to World War II and like the memories in World War II. It has a lot to do with memories, because essentially the idea behind the movie is that there's this dying man, this unseen dying man that's Tarkovsky on a bed in a hospital, and it's kind of like he's going through his entire life just sort of in these memories, and they're playing it, and so it's got this dreamlike editing to it. Each sequence has kind of its own little story that it's not like there's this big overarching story other than this is just this guy's life. And a lot of this movie too was a tribute to his father, Tarkovsky's father, who was a poet. So he has a lot of his father's poetry in the film that complements the movie, and a lot of the movie was inspired by his father's poetry. So it's probably it is his most personal film, is Mirror, but it's also arguably his most like inaccessible movie, because it doesn't really have a set story. It doesn't really have like this like set narrative. So a lot of people who get into Tarkovsky, they start off with Stalker, which is a good starting point. I mean, it is a bit more experimental than like some of his earlier work. But I mean, I love Stalker. And that's based on the book Roadside Picnic, but it's also very inspired by like the paintings of Belenok. So Stalker is great. I mean, if you hear people talking about Tarkovsky like in a sort of film bro sense, like they're gonna be talking about Stalker. But I think that a good like starting off point for Tarkovsky are his two earlier films, which are Ivan's Childhood and Andrei Rublev. Ivan's Childhood is a World War II movie, and it's very accessible. It's got the Tarkovsky stylings in it and everything like that. It was his first feature film, but it's not like Mirror, where it's like this, it's supposed to be like this visual poem, And then Andrei Rublev is a historical epic about a man who paints Orthodox Christian paintings, but gets involved in all these like big historical events, like battles and stuff like that. And it's kind of Lord of the Rings-ish, in a sense. And it's really fun. It's a really fun movie. I'm pretty sure that the shot in The Fellowship of the Ring where Boromir gets hit by the arrows and falls into the river, that's taken straight from Andrei Rublev. So it's just a really great, like, just big epic movie. If you can see it in the cinema, go see it in the cinema. Solaris, of course, that's another big Tarkovsky classic sci-fi film that got remade. The remake is nothing like his film. And then, his more sort of introspective works are The Sacrifice and Nostalgia. And Nostalgia famously has the ending, or it's not the ending shot, but close to the end. No, maybe it is the ending shot. I don't know. It's been about a year since I've seen it, so I might be mixing it up. But it's at the end. At the end, the main character takes a candle and walks across a sulfur bath. And
I thought this was when you said Tchaikovsky, the first thing I thought of was that shot.
Yeah.
I've seen it like mentioned in lots of videos before.
Yeah, and it's like over 9 minutes long. Of him walking across a sulfur bath holding a candle. And if you watch the whole film, it's a very powerful moment. You know, it gets memed on because it's like, wow, a 9.5 minute shot of a guy walking with a candle. But if you watch the whole film, it makes a lot of sense.
That's how I feel about a certain shot that lasts a whole minute in Evangelion. That's very infamous.
Next, I've got 3 movies. I have Ip Man as my essential karate movie because this is so much fun. A lot of fun.
I'm glad you didn't pick The Raid.
Although Ip Man is basically Chinese propaganda.
It is, especially the second one.
Yeah.
Because the second one's about him beating an American boxer and like. Because I think the first one, their enemy is Japan.
Yeah, their enemy is Japan in the first one, yeah.
They're both, like, extremely nationalistic.
And then was it Ip Man 4 or 5 where he goes to San Francisco?
I've only seen the first 2, but I wouldn't be surprised. For my number 5, this is a little bit odder because I'm kind of recommending a franchise, at least parts of it. But it is Ghost in the Shell. Classic, perennial sci-fi anime series that was originally a manga that is essentially a police procedural set like 60 years in the future. The main development is that we have cyber brains now. You can turn your brain into a cyborgized brain, and cyborgize pretty much every part of your body, and interface with technology more directly. And like, you know, there's lots of newfangled weaponry and stuff that the characters have to deal with. But it's one of the like probably in the world of anime, it is the most hard sci-fi where like the author of the original manga was trying to justify everything because he knows like the shit he's talking about. There's parts in the manga where there's just like whole paragraphs of like explanation of how something works in the sidebar. So very technically detailed, but whereas the original manga is kind of fun, it's more of like a normal police procedural. The film by Mamoru Oshii from 1995 is very dark and dour and atmospheric and very famous. Had a ton of impact on a lot of directors. Was one of the first anime to really break the West. Like, there had been anime fans who speak English in like the 80s and stuff, but when like Ghost in the Shell and Akira like really blew up in the UK and US, and that brought anime to like a much bigger audience in terms of like a bigger older audience. They were big with college students and shit. But Ghost in the Shell is like it's got the tits and violence that draw people in, but the true appeal is the philosophy and the just unbelievably fucking gorgeous animation and background art and music. But as much as I do love the Ghost in the Shell movie, it is basically trying to boil down the concepts to like the most focused, like just one story that, you know, tells you the core ideas of Ghost in the Shell.
Yeah.
The actual best version of Ghost in the Shell, in my opinion, is Standalone Complex, which is 2 26-episode seasons of TV that were made for, they were pay-per-view anime. It's like one of the most expensive TV anime ever made because every episode costed like, you know, the amount of like a OVA. But it's just because of the fact that it takes the time to flesh out this sci-fi world in so much more depth, and it takes itself very seriously as a police procedural while also being a lot more fun than the movie is. It's got a jazzy Yoko Kanno soundtrack. And really interesting animation because like it's one of the first shows to integrate CG in a way that actually looks really good, and it's shocking that it came out in like 2004 because most anime today can't do that.
Yeah.
But when I was younger, I didn't get Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex because it is very slow and very technical. But when it starts talking about ideas like AI developing thought and personhood, or what it means to have your brain continually redubbed into new packages and stuff like that, and getting more and more distant from your physical body, is really fascinating. But what makes Ghost in the Shell a classic more than anything else is the main character, Motoko Kusanagi, one of the greatest role models in anime history, because she's a full body cyborg because she was in an accident when she was young and she just can't be in her original body. So because of this, she has embraced the technology more than anybody else. And while we'll see stories of people who literally port themselves into a cyber brain and then just live inside of an inner movie theater and watch their own films for the rest of eternity and stuff like that. Motoko Kusanagi is very dedicated to knowing and being able to do everything. Anything to do with technology, she has to understand it. She's a huge presence in the internet world, where she's actually an internet celebrity, basically. And in the manga, she makes her own porn games to release on the internet. So by the time you get to the second volume of the manga, or the film Solid State Society that is after the show, she's just gotten so powerful through the internet that she can control multiple bodies at once, and it's just affecting things all over the place. And actually, in the original film, the puppet master, who is the villain, is an AI that was created an AI that created itself by just all the information that was on the internet, becoming self-aware, and it actively seeks out Motoko because her presence had such an influence on it that it's I wouldn't exist if not for the fact that you've been online and I've been reading your posts, basically, or I am the creation of the fact that you exist. Very fascinating stuff, and the whole show is great. It'll give you tons to think about. And again, for me, I was not a big sci-fi fan until I got into Ghost in the Shell and Mass Effect, the video game series, because both of them have the most robust sci-fi universes I've seen, and I really like that. So, highly recommended.
So my next one is a bit of an experimental film, but it's one of those must-see experimental films. And I'm sorry if my list may come off as I'm a film student or whatever. I'm trying to make a list of movies to really get into. Movies to really get into Kino. Of course, there's going to be deeper cuts and things like that. But with this movie, Ingmar Bergman really sort of made a leap. And I think that it's a very important movie. A lot of people consider it his best movie. Actually, or my favorite movie from Bergman, personally, is Fanny and Alexander, which is his final film. But this movie, I think, is his most important. And that is Persona, which came out in 1960, I believe. And Persona stars Bibi Andersson and Liv Ullmann, and it's pretty much just the two of them. There's a couple actors that that come into play, but it's about an actress and and her nurse, and they go to this beach house, and the actress has lost her voice, and so the nurse is doing all the talking. But the interesting thing about this film is that it's about this parasitic relationship where their identities start to merge, where it becomes hard to tell who is
That's
who.
That's extremely interesting to me.
Yeah, whose memories are whose, and you know what I mean, and she starts.
Actually, just to tie that into Ghost in the Shell, because that's kind of how the first movie ends. Is that the puppet master and Motoko have to irreparably fuse into one mind in order to live.
Yeah, and this is done in a very sort of this is a Swedish movie, Swedish art house movie, so it's done in a very it's Bergman-esque way. It's a Bergman movie, but the opening bit of the film is this montage that I believe inspired the. I could be wrong. I could be completely wrong, but I believe it inspired the the video for The Ring that they watch. That tape. Yeah, so the opening montage of Persona, I believe, inspired the videotape of The Ring. I could be completely wrong, but I'm pretty sure this
girl crawling out of a well towards the camera.
There's a whole bunch of really weird imagery, and actually, it was the first time I think in a film I saw an erect penis in a movie. There's a shot, like a flash of it. There's a lot of.
My mind is Antichrist.
oh yeah. No, I saw Persona before I saw Antichrist. But no, that was like, it has this really experimental montage before, and then it goes into this movie that's about the loss of identity. It's about the sort of like weird parasitical relationship between these two women, and it's not that long. It's 80 minutes, so it's a pretty short film, but it's incredibly fascinating, and
that's going on my must-watch list because just thematically it appeals to me a whole lot.
Yeah, so I won't say anything more. You know, a lot of these movies, like I would love to just talk about like every single scene. You know what I mean? I want to go like, yeah, and wasn't this scene so cool and stuff like that? And I'm thinking, the people who are watching this, they haven't seen these movies. You know what I mean? I don't want to spoil it for them.
Right.
But yeah,
I'm trying not to as well. I don't. Luckily, on my list, a lot of these shows can't really be spoiled because they're not like so plot driven. You know, but. There will be some coming up.
Oh, and Persona has some very hot scenes, just gonna say.
Next, I have my favorite childhood movie, and that is The Iron Giant. It's also my favorite anti-government movie because Kent Mansley is such a fucking doofus.
That's a good movie.
He nukes a town because he's scared of a robot.
Yeah.
With people in it. Where's the robot, Mansley?
It's pretty American.
All right, well, my number 4, I'm going to do another director because all of his films are necessary viewing, and there's only 4 of them because he died at 48 of pancreatic cancer. Satoshi Kon. His first film, Perfect Blue, that was the one I was going to put on the list just because it might be my favorite, but they all have to be seen. Perfect Blue is a psychological thriller about a pop idol who decides to transition into becoming an actress, and her obsessive fans start stalking her, and there's all kinds of crazy murders happening around her, and the mystery of the film is basically like, who the fuck is doing this? Is she just losing her mind? Is this actually happening? It's all about this like emotional downward spiral she goes on of, you know, not being able to tell what the hell's going on in her reality anymore. It is extremely prescient. As an internet celebrity who's had my house broken in on, I relate to a lot of this movie in a way that I really wish I didn't. So it was a movie I saw when I was pretty young, and it scared the shit out of me. And then seeing it as an adult, I was like, I should have been way more afraid even than I was. But
I saw the movie in the cinema.
Oh, excellent. I would have loved the opportunity.
That was a great experience, yeah. No, I love that film.
But I did get to see a second movie in theaters when they ran it like last 2 years ago, something like that, which is Millennium Actress, another highly necessary love letter to all of film history because it's about this documentary filmmaker who's obsessed with an actress who's, I think, like in her 80s. And like he's been watching her movies obsessively, and he wants to interview her before she dies. So he goes to her house, and as she tells him her life story, it is presented through showing you all of her films. So it's like we are transported into the movies, but it's blending the reality of what she actually did with the movies she was starring in at those times. So again, it's kind of like mysterious what's real or what's not, and like there's lots of meta and fourth wall stuff where like the characters are interacting, on all these different layers of the storytelling. So it's super fucking entertaining just to watch it happen, and like all the inventive ideas of how to, blend reality and cinema. That's pretty much Satoshi Kon's obsession is, I don't want you to know what the fuck's real or what the hell's going on in these movies. They're all really surreal and really good. And the next one he made right after that, Tokyo Godfathers, is the perfect Christmas movie. It's about 3 homeless people who discover a baby, and they're trying to find out where it came from and bring it home. And pretty much every step of the way, it's a comedy film, unlike his others, which are, Millennium Actress is just like a fun drama, like a biopic, whereas Perfect Blue is a fucking nightmare. And Tokyo Godfathers is a fun, freewheeling, good-spirited, also a very good Christian movie, or at least a movie about faith. Because the low key thing that you'll notice if you've seen the movie a couple times is that at no point does the plot ever progress because of the effort of the characters. It only ever progresses because of sheer chance, and the characters are not aware of this. They're not really noticing it's happening, but like, yeah, they're just kind of experiencing the story and going through it. Also around this time, Satoshi Kon did his only TV show, Paranoia Agent, which is 12 episodes, super fucking trippy and psychological. That one's about a character designer who is under a lot of stress, and so she designs a character, and it takes the world by storm, is the best way I could put it. But it's sort of a psychological thriller with a little bit of a horror tinge, that's really about the way that people go into their own illusions, the way that people like create illusory worlds for themselves and lose themselves in them, essentially, until the point that all of society is doing that. And then his final film, Paprika, is about a dreaming machine where you can go into people's dreams and fucking do detective work. Also based on a novel. Paprika is like, it's kind of long and really out of control. It's got tons of crazy experimental visuals, and some really like fucking weird and disturbing moments in certain places. But I was not as into Paprika as his other movies. I thought it was like a little bit of a clusterfuck. Maybe I could watch it again and I'll like it more. I'm not sure. It's still considered a classic by many people, and I'm not going to tell you that you shouldn't, consider it something that you need to see. But particularly Perfect Blue and Millennium Actress, those are the ones that, like, you gotta watch those movies because they're just way too damn good.
Perfect Blue is so good. Actually, in my beginner's guide to cinema, I recommended Perfect Blue. That was one of the few animes that I did recommend. Yeah.
I should also mention that before Satoshi Kon was an anime director, and he's done a couple, he wrote a segment of this anthology film called Memories, an experimental anthology that the first part of it, Magnetic Rose, is a sci-fi ghost story that he wrote that's really cool. And he also directed 2 episodes of one of the old JoJo OVAs, the old JoJo Part 3 OVAs, which is, his episodes are pretty fun. They've got some Satoshi Konisms in them. But he was also a manga author before that, and he has a manga called Opus that is about a manga author getting trapped in his own manga. And in that manga is like a very late 80s like police drama about psychics, like police with psychic powers kind of thing. Very good read as well. But yeah, anything Satoshi Kon ever touched was absolute genius, and we lost him way too early because no one has come anywhere close to being able to fill his shoes. No one makes movies anything like his movies. His last movie, The Dreaming Machine, had to be abandoned. Like, the producer spent like 10 years trying to find somebody who could like finish it, and he couldn't. So it's probably never gonna happen.
That's what happens, when you have a visionary that is lost. But speaking of Satoshi Kon, I'm going back to Japan with my list. And we are going to Masaki Kobayashi's film, Hara-Kiri, which is my favorite samurai movie. I'm a huge fan of samurai films. From Kurosawa's films to Satoichi, I just love samurai movies. But Hara-Kiri is the actor Tatsui Nakadai. I'm probably butchering these,
No,
Japanese.
That sounds right. That sounds correct.
So he's like this Ronin, right? That goes to this feudal lord's palace, is his palace, yeah. And he requests to commit ritual seppuku, because this is like in the period that kind of is like the after the samurai period, right, where it's like the samurai were seen as just like these, basically just as these thugs, right? So he and they would go into these palaces and ask to commit ritual seppuku, really just as a means to beg for money, because like the whole old ways were destroyed, where they could make any kind of money. So before he decides to kill himself to commit seppuku, he gives the story of why he came to this palace. And let me tell you, it is one of the most just intense and also badass like stories in all of like samurai or even film history, with some stuff that's just like you're watching it and you're like, holy shit. And it has the best ending samurai fight in any movie. The best.
That sounds lit.
Yeah.
Wasn't that movie remade by Takashi Miike at some point?
Was it?
I might be wrong. I might be thinking of something else.
I know he made 13 Assassins, which was kind of like Seven Samurai. Sort of, kind of. I don't know. I'm not a huge Takashi Miike fan. Like, that's where I diverge with some people, because I think that, it comes across in his films that he makes his movies really, like, quickly.
Yeah, well, he makes like 4 of them a year for like 15 years. But, Hara-Kiri, sick.
My favorite American movie is Lincoln, the 2012 film.
Cool.
I really got a kick out of it. Mary Lincoln was portrayed really well. Lincoln was portrayed really well. It's Daniel Day-Lewis, and he did a lot for it. There's at one point, Lincoln is having people over at his log cabin. Someone uses the bathroom and notices there's a picture of George Washington over the toilet, and they go, "Well, what's that for?" And Lincoln looks, laughs, and goes, "Well, that's in case any redcoats ever come over and they need help using the bathroom." Because they'd shit themselves.
Right, yeah. That's fun.
I'll move on to my number 3, which is Neon Genesis Evangelion. Probably my second favorite anime after Shirobako. It is, in my opinion, the most Kino anime. Every single image of it is goddamn beautiful and deeply etched into my mind. It has probably the most like impressionistic cinematography I've seen in anime without going actually crazy experimental. It has stuff, and it has influential techniques in it, but for the most part, it's just the insanely good framing on everything and incredible design work, detail in the setting. But Eva takes place in 2015, I think. It was made in 95. The world was mostly ended by something called an angel falling and melting Antarctica and flooding the world. And now more angels are showing up, and so there's this organization called Nerve that created these giant robots to fight the angels, and they need young kids to pilot them, but all of those kids are very psychologically disturbed, and they do not have a good time.
I want to say this. My favorite scene in Evangelion is when Shinji says, "I'm so fucked up."
Yeah, that's a good one. Oh, man. End of Eva is next level. Like, as I love the show, but the movie is so, like, orgasmic to watch that it's like, I could watch End of Eva over and over again forever, probably, and never get tired of it.
The third impact is super good. It's like where he's like melding with it and everything, and also
it all comes tumbling down, tumbling down, tumbling down.
Also, just that last, I'm not going to spoil it, but the last image that we're stuck with of Shinji and Asuka.
I don't think you can not spoil that because it's everywhere on the internet. It's like a huge meme, but it is a classic shot. And I think it's kind of on the movie poster as well, or at least the giant Ray head is. But yeah, I mean, the imagery of that movie is the most insane imagery I've just ever seen. Like, so fucking awesome.
No, it's good. Yeah, and you're right in that it's not necessarily like experimental in the way that it presents it, but the things that it presents are very next level, especially when it comes to anime. Yeah.
So, like, one of the most interesting things about the TV show is that it changes radically in tone every 5 episodes or so, because of the introduction of different characters. And it's ultimately a show about communication. It stars a kid who does not know how to communicate in any way, shape, or form, and no one really knows how to reach him. And so he has to pilot the Eva. No one else can do it. He has no desire to do so, and nobody really knows how to motivate him to do so. So the first 4 or 5 episodes are just the older characters figuring out, like, how do we get this kid to pilot the robot? And then once that finally happens, then we go into the arc where Asuka shows up, the other pilot who loves piloting the robot, wants to do nothing but pilot the robot, and really resents the fact that she is just not as naturally good at it as fucking Shinji is, that piece of shit. Yeah. So, they have a conflict throughout the midsection of the show, which becomes much more of like a fun anime action show. And there's a lot of people who like, this is the only part of the show they like, where they're like, oh, it's actually like watchable. Because after that, it just dives into sheer psychological horror, because the angels keep getting better at fucking with our protagonists when they start reading their mind and realizing that, oh, we can just make them go insane and they won't be able to fight us anymore. So it basically becomes like a bunch of Lovecraftian monsters mind-raping children, and it's pretty fucked. But this is another show that I think the fact that it has an older cast that is super fleshed out is what makes it so easy to return to. Like, when I watched this first, I was 14. I felt like I was Shinji Ikari. Then I watched it when I was in my 20s, and I felt like I was Misato. So it has a nice evolution of how you can connect to different people as you grow up. But it's just so insanely fleshed out and dense with information. It's a show that, like, as you watch it again, you'll keep noticing just little flourishes and details that couldn't have made sense the first time. And again, the movie is just the most hype shit I've ever fucking seen. I personally am not the first time I watched the show, the last 2 episodes had a huge impact on me, because there's this whole speech about, like, the Asuka in my mind and the Asuka in your mind are 2 different people, and you need to acknowledge the existence of both. And, like, that was a revelation to me when I was 14. Now I see it as, like, imperative that you understand this to communicate in the world. But, like, those last 2 episodes were made because they couldn't finish the show. And they're very slapped together, and it's literally, like, hack writing. It's just explaining the themes for fucking 40 minutes. Whereas End of Eva, the movie, is, like, this unbelievably god-tier piece of artsy animation. So, yeah.
It's like you can basically substitute the last 2 episodes of the show with End of Eva.
I would say that if you're watching the show for the first time, I do recommend watching those last 2 episodes to have seen them. But yeah. Like, I don't think that they count as the actual end to me. Especially because it just doesn't even make sense as the ending of the story. Like, it kind of has a happy ending that's
the congratulations
that it
ending
had.
Where it's like everyone's clapping and saying congratulations.
Right.
Yeah, and it's like, the last 2 episodes do kind of feel almost like a video essay on the show as a whole, in a sense, rather than like being summing everything up, you know.
But I'm a huge fan because it's much like Sangatsu no Lain that I mentioned earlier. Both of those are shows where there are visual moments that capture feelings so perfectly that, like, that's the way I understand that feeling, is through, like, that image. My favorite being, like, in episode 4, there's this long part where Shinji, like, runs away and just kind of walks around and, like, walks through all these fields. He goes to the edge of a cliff and it's all misty and he's just kind of, like, dissolving into the mist and it's, like, all white everywhere. And I'm like, yeah, that's what dissociation's like right there. So I love that. But and also I have to mention that Eva is just, like, one of the most important anime ever, specifically because, as I said about, like, Serial Experiments Lain and Cowboy Bebop, which are both on this list, are a direct result of Eva. Like, this show came out and was super successful, super popular, not necessarily as much initially, but, like, when it got into the later episodes and then the reruns, it became, like, a huge mega hit. And so for a while, there was just way more experimental anime. The late 90s and early 2000s were a really good time for crazy shit. And I think pretty much what put a kibosh on that was that they started having to learn how to do digital. And that was really difficult. And then, like 2006 came around and Death Note became the most popular thing in the world, and so anime became kind of mainstream and like became like more normal again, but in a good way sometimes. And also the negative effect of Eva is that Evangelion has a huge range of influences. It's influenced by lots of like tokusatsu shows from all around the world, special effects stuff, like influenced by live action movies and all kinds of things. Whereas in the wake of Eva, it created a kind of obsessive anime fan who only cares about anime. So like the director's biggest criticism of anime is that like so much of it is only taking influence from other anime, and so it creates this endless spiral of stuff that looks and feels exactly the same that all these great classical directors fucking can't stand. So
yeah, you can say the same thing about YouTubers.
Indeed.
YouTube, but yeah, no, that happens. It's like films, like people who want to be filmmakers who study film and they're only influenced by other movies and they're not influenced by things like history or philosophy or theology or
like
these
walking
things
around
actually,
outside, like experiencing the world. Yeah, like you cannot generate media only from other media because you won't understand what that media is referencing in the first place. Yeah,
exactly. Like you have to be well-rounded in order to really create something good. But yeah, so I'm going to go on to my number 3 here, because I mean I know it's later for you because I'm Central Time, but I do have work in the morning. Yeah. So my number 3 is Paul Thomas Anderson's The Master, which stars Joaquin Phoenix, Philip Seymour Hoffman, and Amy Adams. And it's loosely based on the creation of Scientology back in the 50s. But really what the film is about is it's about Joaquin Phoenix's character, who is this World War II veteran, who is this animalistic sort of primal kind of guy. Like he's the id, you know what I mean? Like he really is kind of the embodiment of the id. And after World War II, he's kind of a drifter and he's going from place to place, job to job and everything like that. He's a drunk. And not only is he like a drunk off of normal alcohol, but he's like drinking like cleaning chemicals and stuff like that to get loaded. Jesus. Like he's really bad off, right? PTSD, whatever, like the whole gamut. And he drunkenly stumbles upon this boat, that is owned by Lancaster Dodd, who is played by Philip Seymour Hoffman. And he is kind of a take on the head of Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I can't really think straight when it's this late.
I'm getting to I'm running on fumes at this point personally.
Yeah.
I was at court at 8 in the morning, so
yeah, same here actually.
Oh,
yeah.
That's weird.
So L. Ron Hubbard, and he takes an interest in this guy, and they begin this really intense friendship. And how the movie makes it feel is as if they're like two sides of the same person. But the cinematography of this film is just absolutely stunning. And you have two of the best actors to have acted in the last 20 years, Joaquin Phoenix, Philip Seymour Hoffman. Just two powerhouses right next to each other the entire time.
I've definitely heard of this movie for being like the big actor movie. Like this is the performances movie.
Yeah, no, but I mean it's a lot more than that. The thing is that it is one of those films that you can watch and then you can just like continually pick apart and just see more. And every time I watch this movie, there's just more for me to see. And I think that it's a good introduction into Paul Thomas Anderson. Like all of his films have just great performances in it, because he also made, like There Will Be Blood, Magnolia, Boogie Nights, Phantom Thread, Punch Drunk Love, Inherent Vice. It's just like There's not a single bad movie that Paul Thomas Anderson has made, but my favorite it has to be The Master. So it's my number 3.
And then my final one, which is a game, and I think the best game ever, is Borderlands 2. Borderlands 2, man, I love that game.
You have to watch Borderlands 2 before you die, you guys.
Yeah, you play it. You gotta play Borderlands. You gotta do it.
Look, I'm gonna have to disagree with you here, Bird. The best game ever made is the original Deus Ex.
I haven't played it, but I would believe that.
That's probably the most like Kino video game.
Yeah.
If you were to go on like 4chan's gaming board, that's the one that's
I'm a guy that grew up on 4chan, so I guess I'm predictable.
You're called the Kino Corner. I think you.
Coolest 4chaner I've ever talked to.
All right, my boss just called me. I got
4chan
a
always
secret
does
mission,
that, though.
and I do choose to accept it. My phone's gonna self-destruct if I don't get out of here.
All right, my number 2 is going to be another of the most important anime of all time, Mobile Suit Gundam. So, Mobile Suit Gundam is the original Big Robot show. The original, like, realistic Big Robot show. Because it came out in 1979 at the tail end of... Basically, up until the existence of Gundam, anime was primarily either, like, shows that are based on, like, classical literature... aimed at younger audiences or families and stuff like that. Sports anime, usually very like character driven stuff where you're like watching one person's life and their journey through life kind of thing. Or like really dumb schlocky robot shows for kids that were made to sell toys. And at some point, after about 10 years of schlocky robot shows, a bold visionary director named Yoshiyuki Tomino was like, hey, what if we made one where the robots are like actual war weapons, like a war story with these big robots? Wouldn't that be neat? We'll have like an all-white robot. It'll be like a real gritty thing. And the studio was like, you cannot make an all-white robot. Throw some colors on that bitch. And he went, fine. So he made Mobile Suit Gundam, which is like one of the most hard-nosed war stories out there because what Tomino loves to focus on is the chaos of war specifically. It's always about how like when big robots show up and start fighting in your town, a bullet casing can hit the ground and crush you and you'll die. And like, every scene is madness. And but the main character is a kid named Amuro, who is, his dad is the designer of the Gundam, unbeknownst to him, but he ends up stumbling into the cockpit of one and having to fight a couple of enemies and kill them right away. And he lives in a space colony. This is another show with like a super fleshed out sci-fi universe with all kinds of crazy tech and like, but it's much more politically driven. It's not trying to be realistic in particular with its technology, but it does have really realistic politics and characters, and the way the characters act feels real and in a way that's uncommon to really anything, because I think most writers try to make their characters kind of smart or like cool and pithy. Tomino's approach is like everyone's a dumb piece of shit. Like at best you can force them into maybe doing something good every once in a while, but like there are no real heroes or villains in the story. It's just war. Our main character happens to be on one side of it, and the people who are leading the other side are like definitely corrupt, but neither side is good. And like the original show is 36 episodes, which were condensed into 3 feature films that, like, if you don't think you can watch the whole show, I highly recommend watching the movies because they're fucking awesome. Especially the third one is, like, a kind of a classic. The second one suffers a little bit from how much was cut from it, from the show, but nonetheless, very worth watching and, extremely influential, because in the wake of this it created a whole genre of like realistic robot shows, but more than that it kind of created like otaku. Like it was the show that it created the man baby anime fan, because it's like, oh hey, I can like dumb robot shit but it'll be serious and like tell a story. Amazing. Like, so after that the 80s was just all sci-fi and fun, crazy, violent things made for adults. and like the anime boom really like kind of followed in that. And there's a ton of Gundam, which is off-putting to a lot of people, but I'll explain briefly that there are two different universes of Gundam. You have the Universal Century, which is all shows that actually take place within the same storyline as the original show. So anything that's within the UC is kind of worth watching, and that it all ties together. Some of them are better than others. The original is definitely worth watching, so at the very least you should check that out. Zeta Gundam, the direct sequel, is also quite good. And there's good stuff throughout. And then there's the alternate century stuff, which is basically in the 90s when Tomino just hated Gundam because they'd made him do like 6 shows and he was fucking tired of it. He'd gotten to a point where he just made it as depressing as possible and would just like have characters die all the time and just like everything sucks. So the studio finally went, hey, what if we like brought in other directors and made like alternate universe Gundam shows that can just sell toys? So most of those are the ones that have come to the States and been broadcast on TV. But the original show is absolutely worth watching. I think I had to put it high on my list to really make sure people understand how imperative I think it is to watch, because everyone thinks that they don't have to. Everyone's like tries to make up excuses for themselves of why they don't have to watch Gundam. You gotta watch Gundam. It's worth it. It's actually good. People are put off by it kind of looking old, I guess, but it's actually really beautiful. The background art is like insanely gorgeous and detailed, and it brings the world to life in a big way. And insane things happen. I mean, the backstory that you're explained at the very beginning is that the war began when the people who live in space dropped a colony on Australia and killed a third of the population of the planet. So, like right from the get-go, we are like apocalyptic levels of war. Really cool.
All right, so my number 2 is my personal favorite movie of all time, and that is Terrence Malick's The Tree of Life, which came out in 2011.
I've heard that as
it's
like, yeah.
Yeah, so it's really unlike any movie that has come out before it or has come out since. A lot of people try to ape Malick's style. Malick does have a very particular style, and even in this last year, movies like Minari and Nomadland were sort of taking on Malick's style. His style has become very popular in the last few years. I mean, because it's good, because it's effective. But what The Tree of Life is it's a very simple story, but told in a kind of symphonic sort of a biblical way. It's just a story about a boy growing up in Waco, Texas. So Sean Penn is living in Houston, and he is reflecting on his childhood because it's the anniversary of his brother's suicide. So he's reflecting on his childhood growing up with his 2 parents, who are played by Jessica Chastain and Brad Pitt, and he has 2 brothers and his mom, and it's everything in the film is very allegorical. So his mom sort of represents the way of grace, and his dad represents the way of nature. So his dad is very overbearing, his dad is very violent and oppressive. His mom is very loving. His mom is very sort of spiritual. And the film uses, in my opinion, the film perfects cinematic language by telling stories on the screen, not through traditional narrative means, but by associative images and by symbolism and metaphor. And one of the things that the film does, and a lot of people had issues with the film because of this, but for me it's it works for the benefit of the movie, is that there's like a 30-minute sequence in the film where it veers off from the main story to show the creation of the universe.
That sounds like my kind of movie.
Yeah. So it shows the creation of the universe and the whole idea behind it. And just, my cousin was like, oh, this is the worst movie I've ever seen, and stuff like that. And me, I'm just like, my mind is like blown, I'm just like, this is amazing. And the whole point of it is that it's a very Christian movie. You have to understand that Terrence Malick is big time Christian, and a Rhodes Scholar from Harvard. The guy is like a genius. But it's the idea of the macrocosm and the microcosm. It's like we're seeing the creation of the universe. We're seeing billions of years of creation and evolution and everything like that, and yet we care about this one kid in Waco, Texas in the 1950s. It's kind of almost putting us like in God's eyes in a sense. It's this really just sort of transcendent experience. And that's I think that's the proper descriptor for the Tree of Life, is that it's a transcendent experience. It's just like you feel like a new person. If you really are experiencing the film.
Yeah, would you say it induces ego death?
So, it can. But if you're really experiencing the film, and I mean like no cell phones, no distractions, nothing like that, you are sitting down and you are experiencing this film. Nothing, like there's no other world outside of you. It's just this movie. It's a transcendent experience. It's just like, it's unlike anything I have ever. I've seen thousands of movies, and there's nothing like the Tree of Life out there. We'll
definitely watch that movie because it sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's okay. So I nerded out a little bit. All right, I used to work in Austin, and I visited the house where they shot the movie. That was one of my highlights in my film expeditions. I visited the shooting location of the film. It's in a place called Smithville, Texas, which is about 45 minutes ish southeast of Austin. But it takes place in Waco, and there's some shots in Waco as well. But all the performances are just great. And the cinematography is absolutely beautiful. The cinematography is by Emmanuel Lubezki, who is the first cinematographer to win 3 Oscars in a row for Birdman, Revenant, and was it Gravity? It was.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, and so he's just. I mean, it's just a whole bunch of masters just at work making an absolute masterpiece. And Terrence Malick didn't even have a script for the movie. I won't get too much into it because I will be making a video on the Tree of Life later this year. But yeah, the whole process for making the movie was just unlike anything I have ever heard of. But it makes sense because it's one of the very few one-of-a-kind films.
Well, my number one most recommended anime, most Kino that you need to watch is basically every Ghibli film.
Yeah.
I don't know how I was supposed to divide this. There's I could have filled the list with just Ghibli movies. So my personal favorite is The Wind Rises. Up to currently, it's the latest film that Hayao Miyazaki has made, a biopic about a guy who made planes that eventually went on to bomb everybody in World War II. And basically he spends his whole life working his ass off and then realizes he shouldn't have done that, and it's really sad. Then my second favorite is Ponyo, which is the most fun, just exuberant, joyful movie of all time, about a little kid who meets a fish girl who accidentally floods the world, but it's all cool because everybody's having a good time. And also it's technically an adaptation of The Little Mermaid. Very weird as an adaptation of The Little Mermaid. Princess Mononoke, probably his most beloved film, a absolute epic about basically about the way that humans are trying to kill God and nature, and the hubris of attempting that, because God will ultimately just wipe you fucking out if you were to kill him, because you don't understand what you're doing if you try to do that. And it's this long epic exploring all of that. Spirited Away, his film that won an Academy Award, the first anime ever to win an Academy Award for Best Animated Feature. And it's about a young girl whose parents take her to this old carnival place, and then they turn into pigs, and she gets trapped in the spirit world, and she has to learn how to work hard and the value of not being an entitled kid. It's a movie specifically about how Hayao Miyazaki is a dictator and working for Ghibli is miserable. So that's the undercurrent of that one. And then you've got other classics, Castle in the Sky. I personally don't consider it as much of a must-watch. I think it's a little bit sloppier, but it has such iconic imagery and music, and it's like very culturally important. Nazca of the Valley of the Wind, which is an absolutely fucking gorgeous biopunk epic. The manga for that is even better. The movie's great, but the manga is like this 7-volume religious epic that is absolutely, everybody should read that as well. Then you've got all the fucking Isao Takahata films. Oh, I didn't even mention Porco Rosso. There's so fucking many of these. Anything Hayao Miyazaki directed is a must-watch. Anything Isao Takahata directed, particularly with Ghibli, is a must-watch. Grave of the Fireflies is a whole very depressing treatise on the death of the Japanese identity after World War II. There's actually a couple of his movies I still haven't seen yet. My Neighbor the Yamadas I have not seen. Pom Poko is presented as a historical drama, except it's about the history of tanukis, which are these little Japanese magic raccoons that can speak English and grow their testicles any size they want. There's a lot of testicle play in this movie, but it's really good. And he also did the most recent one before he died was Kaguya Hime, which is a classic Japanese folktale readapted into a gorgeous impressionistic film that took 6 years to animate. And then even beyond those directors, the ones by Hiromasa Yonebayashi, which are the Secret World of Arrietty and When Marnie Was There, not as Kino as the other two directors, but still very good movies. I feel like I've named all the really important ones to myself, so yeah. Watch pretty much anything Ghibli made, and except for Tales of Earthsea, which is legendarily not good, but otherwise all their shit's good.
Yeah, I love Ghibli. I've seen a lot of their films. I love the story of Princess Mononoke where he sent the sword and it said no cuts.
Yeah.
Legendary story. Yeah,
that is great.
Yeah, he sent it to Weinstein, didn't he? It was to Weinstein. Was it to Weinstein?
It was Disney, but whoever it was, somebody, when they bought the rights to the movie, it actually wasn't Miyazaki, but Isao Takahata, who mailed a samurai sword to the Americans and said no cuts. And the reason that happened is because Nazca of the Valley of the Wind had been brought over in the 90s and completely changed into something called Warriors of the Wind, where they cut and rearranged it and made a whole shit out of it. So Miyazaki basically hiked his prices to the point that only Disney could afford to ever buy it. And it was because the head director of Pixar was such a huge fan that he convinced the rest of the company this is important, you need to do this.
Yeah. No, I mean they made so many classics. I grew up
My Neighbor Totoro. How the fuck could I forget that? One of the best movies about child rearing, really. It's about childhood and parenthood.
And what was the other one? Kiki's Delivery Service.
That too. I don't know if I would consider that as Kino as the others, because I think it's a little lopsided as a novel adaptation that it's paced oddly as a film, I think, but I still like it a whole lot. I mean, I'm not going to tell you not to watch Kiki.
I watched that a lot as a kid. I think it's a really good kid movie. It might not age as well when you get older, but when you're a kid, it's great.
It's a great thing to show young artists as a way to get them out of it's being a witch is kind of a metaphor for being an artist in that movie, and losing her powers is a metaphor for writer's block, basically.
Yeah. Well, so you went completely Keanu Chungus wholesome with your number one, and I am going the exact opposite.
Perfect.
So my number one video, or my number one film recommendation, is Pier Paolo Pasolini's final masterpiece, Sallow, or 120 Days of Sodom, which is about 4 fascist libertines during the Republic of Sallow era, and so like 1944, who kidnap. Well, they go through this whole process of selecting these adolescent boys and girls, and then bringing them to this like sort of palace in Italy, and they subject them to sexual, mental, and bodily torture. And it's an adaptation of the Marquis de Sade's 120 Days of Sodom, but
the man who the word sadism literally comes from.
Yeah, so it's an adaptation of his book, 120 Days of Sodom, that he wrote in the Bastille during his final days, and it's an unfinished book as well, and it was a book that was banned for like over 100 years. So it's an unfinished work that was banned for a very long time. And so it makes sense that the movie that is an adaptation of it was in many countries banned for decades. But it fuses that with Dante's Inferno, and it places it in fascist Italy, but it's really commenting on corporatism and globalism in the 1970s, and I think that is more applicable to the status quo, or more applicable to how things are today than it even was back in 1970, like the mid 70s when it came out. Yeah, and especially with the whole thing about Jeffrey Epstein's island, Little St. James, it very much feels like you're looking in on Epstein's island. The film does, and the movie is theatrical. It's over the top. It's symphonic. It's poetic. It's disgusting. It makes you want to vomit while watching it, but it's beautiful at the same time. It's it makes you feel almost nothing for the victims. You don't even know who the victims are, and that feeling of feeling nothing for them but seeing this horrific stuff it gives you a strange feeling that you don't really get in a lot of films. And it's a counterpoint to his previous movies that he came out with called the Trilogy of Life. So here I have the Criterion of Sallow, and here I have the Criterion of the Trilogy of Life. And the Trilogy of Life was celebrating Eros, so celebrating sexuality and love and all these sort of pre-modern values, and how Pasolini saw it is that in the modern era, sex had been commodified. He became a Volcel, essentially, and he just saw the world as disgusting, as culture. He thought that culture was had degraded and was no more, and and so Sallow was an expression of that, and it was an expression of how he saw the world, and that it is disgusting and it is vomit inducing, but that is how he perceived the world, as disgusting and vomit inducing. And it's one of those movies that you only really will have to watch it once, and you'll remember everything.
Thank God. Handle it more than once. Although as I told you before we recorded this, my friends back in high school used to watch this movie like every day.
Yeah, like the thing is that it is a shock movie, but unlike other shock films like a Serbian film or Itchy the Killer, there's so much going on in this film beyond just the shock value. It's an incredibly thoughtful film. It's packed full of philosophy and theology, and everything has a purpose in the movie. Everything makes sense allegorically and metaphorically, and once you really kind of once you really understand what Pasolini is saying, it's an incredibly profound experience. And it's a movie that you will just be thinking of. You'll be, you might not have seen it for several months, and you'll be walking around town, and all of a sudden, you'll start thinking about Salo. Like, it's a film that does not get out of your head. And
that's what I'm afraid of.
For better or for worse, Yeah. Like, personally, for me, I like it. I think it's just such an interesting film. I think it's so interesting. And but yeah, I mean, there's definitely parts of it that are very hard to watch, especially the parts where they are forced to eat shit, and the shit looks very realistic. Yeah. Those parts I almost threw up watching the film for the first time. Of course, like the second time watching any of these movies, it's like the impact is lessened, just because you know what's gonna happen, And but no, the first time I was like literally like gagging in my mouth watching it. But I was watching it with this understanding that I was seeing everything, and I understood what Pasolini was saying with everything that he had on screen. And it's got an incredible score by Ennio Morricone.
Perfect.
Yeah. And the ending to it is just haunting.
I would bet.
Yeah, it's got the most haunting ending of any film.
Well, we've done it. We've recommended what I consider the 15 most Kino anime, and you consider the 15 most Kino films that you need to see before you die.
Yeah. And you might
also, there was Ari and Riley's like 3.5 hours ago that I'm trying to remember.
Plus like a ton of other things.
Oh yeah, plus way more than 15.
Neither of you did 15, which is great.
Yeah, I mean that was even my cut down list.
Right,
So.
no, that's awesome. Thank you both for doing this for the internet. They should also thank you.
Yeah, please thank us both for staying up to what for me is 3:30 in the morning, having woken up to go to court. Both of us woke up to go to court at 8 in the morning. What a coincidence! Yeah, unbelievable. But we stuck it out for y'all.
Awesome. Well, this has been VOIDGAZERS episode 6 or 7. Well, this has been VOIDGAZERS, the Kino cut.
Yeah.
The Kino cut, yeah. Just like Zack Snyder's cut, which, all right, you film Twitter people who are, so far up your own asses. Zack Snyder's cut was actually good.
Yes.
I agree.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Trixie hadn't seen the other Justice League movie and watched it and just came away with how could anybody not like it? And I'm like, well, it must be seeped in the context of waiting 3 years for it.
Right.
Because, it is good. It's good.
It's good. It was fun. It was a fun time. I had a really nice Friday night watching it. No complaints.
I argued with someone, I won't name, for thinking that slow motion was bad. And I'm like, it's a Zack Snyder movie.
Yeah.
Watch Michael Bay films if you don't want explosions.
Right.
I don't know what else to fucking say.
Yeah, I mean, I saw 300 in the cinemas, right? That's all slow motion.
all of them. Watchmen, Zack Snyder really likes slow-mo action scenes.
Yeah.
It's just a staple of the director.
Yeah. Actually, you should look up Zack Snyder's list of his favorite movies, because he has really Kino taste.
Cool. I'll look at him.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you again.
All right. Yeah.
Get to bed.
Thanks, guys, for having me on. I'm going to stop recording.